journey week by week. SNL's best episodes they seek. From Colin to Hanks to Mulaney, counting down moments for you and me. Amazing episodes, epic hosts, the ones that the fans love the most.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our countdown of SNL's greatest episodes of all time as voted by you. My name is John Schneider from the SNN. So excited to be with you on this Tuesday night, a day later because of Labor Day, to count down our next 3 episodes that we'll be talking about here tonight. That would be 9, 8, and 7. So you know that there's going to be some really interesting discussion about these iconic episodes that we're going to talk about here. And I'm so excited to be back once again with my man Bill Kenny to talk through these. Bill, how are you?
I'm good, John. On a Tuesday, SNN never on a Tuesday. This is like pro football on a Friday night. This is crazy. Happy to be here. Do you spell labor with an OU up in like Nate Bargatze would say up in Canada?
We do. I've changed because I text most Americans, mostly Americans. So because of that, I change all my OUs to O's. So every now and then I'll text my Canadian friends with an O and they're like, what's wrong with you? But yes, it's the great debate.
Except glamour, right?
Of course. So yeah, obviously we are here as a presentation of LateNighter.com. So much news in late night television, including a huge announcement earlier in the day that we had 5 new cast members added to the mix for season 51. We broke those down in full. We went live today around 2:30 to talk about them all. So in case you missed that, go back and check that out. Tonight, we are going to be talking exclusively about the episodes here on the countdown. We will reserve all the season 51 talk to either the previous podcast or to what is to come, and plenty will be there for us to talk about soon. So let's bring in our patrons that we have here tonight. So excited to get into this first with my man, Casey Killingsworth is here. Casey, how are you?
I'm great, John. I've had kind of a crazy summer, but it's good to be back here with you guys talking SNL again. And it's a lot going on. I can't wait to get right to it.
Very excited to talk to you, Casey. Obviously, you're doing always great stuff, podcasting and blogging about SNL. So can't wait to get your perspective here tonight. And then we have 2 new friends joining us for the first time on the SNN. So can't wait to get their thoughts. First up, let's bring in Jeffrey Malone is here. Jeffrey, how are you?
I can't complain. Plenty going on here on Tuesday night, talking about some of the best SNL episodes of all time. What a way to spend any evening.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun tonight. Just tell the listeners, give them a quick synopsis of your SNL fandom so they can get to know you a little bit, one of the new people on the pod.
Sure. So I got into SNL around, so I think, Lorne Michaels, he famously says, like, your favorite era was when you were in high school. For me, it was kind of right before and right after. I got into it when I was like 11, 12, late 80s, early 2000s, back when Comedy Central was showing like 3 reruns per day. And then season 27 was the first season I started watching every episode live. Well, not live. I recorded them on my parents' VCR. And then so I really loved the Will Ferrell era. And then the era between that and the end golden era was kind of slow going. But when Sandberg and Hader, Kristen Wiig joined up, then it was quite a revival. So I really loved it when I was in college as well. So I'd say I've seen probably every single episode in its entirety from season 26 onwards. Late 80s, early 90s, I've seen like the hour-long edits. Early 80s and 70s, I know the classics. But I know at least some of all 50 episodes.
That's
or
great.
Seasons,
You're very qualified to be here tonight. So excited to talk to you, Jeffrey. And then joining us as well with an incredible background is Steve Bishop. Steve, how are you?
Doing well, John. Great to be here. It's great to talk about these past episodes of SNL because God knows there's nothing else going on with SNL currently with all the nothing that's going on at 30 Rock. So thrilled to be here and been watching this all summer and looking forward to having the chance to talk about these 3 episodes that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, really excited for tonight. Definitely not the sideshow. We're here. We're the main event here tonight. So we got the primetime spot, and we're going to talk through these 3 new episodes coming up. So, like I said, we're very well into the top 10 greatest episodes of all time. So that means that you, the listeners, voted in spades for all of these. That's going to be revealed here tonight. So first, let's go through everything on the countdown. I'll take a deep breath. We'll go through all of the previous 41 episodes or whatever it is that we've spoken about so far. So bringing them up on screen, spoilers incoming. From the bottom, we got Patrick Swayze and Mariah Carey, season 16, Michael Jordan and Public Enemy, season 17, David Allen Greer, Silverchair, season 21, Anne Hathaway, The Killers, season 34, Jerry Seinfeld, Annie Lennox, season 17, Conan and Don Henley, season 26, Justin Timberlake, season 38, William Shatner, Lone Justice, season 12, JT and Lady Gaga, season 36, Christopher Walken and Foo Fighters, season 28. That takes you to 40. Then we got Alec Baldwin, Pavarotti and Williams, season 24, Sigourney Weaver, season 12, Ryan Gosling and Chris Stapleton, season 49, Alec Baldwin and the B-52, season 15, Seth MacFarlane, Frank Ocean, season 38, Lindsay Lohan, Usher, season 29, Christopher Walken and Arrested Development, season 18, Charles Grodin, Paul Simon and The Persuasion, season 3, Jimmy Fallon and Michael Bublé, season 37, Jason Sudeikis and Brandi Carlile, season 47. That'll take us to 30, where we got Will Ferrell and Green Day from season 34, the series premiere with George Carlin, season 1, Peyton Manning and Carrie Underwood, season 32, Pedro Pascal, Coldplay, season 48, Tom Hanks, Edie Brickell, season 16, Jack Black, Elton John and Brandi Carlile from season 50 is at 25. We got Hanks and Keith Richards, season 14, Tina and Amy with Bruce Springsteen, season 41, Don Rickles and Billy Idol from season 9, John Hamm and Coldplay, season 34. That takes us to 21, and now into the top 20. We got Kristen Wiig and Ray from season 49, Jimmy Fallon and JT, season 39, Tom Hanks, Aerosmith, season 15, Larry David, the 1975, season 41, Candice Bergen and Frank Zappa, season 2, Nate Bargatze, Foo Fighters, season 49, John Mulaney, Jack White, season 43, Martin Short and Paul McCartney, season 38. Last week, we revealed Adam Sandler and Shawn Mendes from 44, Justin Timberlake's Double Duty episode, season 32, and then George Wendt and Francis Ford Coppola with Philip Glass from season 11 was the number 10 episode on the countdown. Bill Kenny, how are we doing so far?
Well, John, that was Mike Murray-esque with your ability there. That was impressive. Yeah, we're doing great. Say this every week. Say it again. We cover some episodes that I didn't think we were going to talk about. Not because, but some of them are so long ago or almost forgotten to time. So I'm really heartened to see, like, talking about George Wendt and Coppola last week. All the ones we've already talked about, like Shatner and Sigourney Weaver, that kind of Seth MacFarlane. So we've covered a large area of the show. Not a lot of original golden era, which is kind of surprising. But we've got a lot of coverage here. So I forget how many seasons we're at, 26, 27, something like that. So we really are getting everything from the history of the show here.
So far, we are at 29 seasons on this countdown. So very, very good stuff from the listeners. Casey, you're one of the biggest fans of Saturday Night Live that I know. I know you've seen the entire series. How do you feel like this countdown has come together?
I feel like this countdown's come together in an interesting way. I can see, I definitely see why some episodes were placed where they were. I would argue with very few of them. I mean, Pedro Pascal and Ryan Gosling, I feel like a little too much recency bias comes into play here for me. I mostly agree with the top 20 so far. Glad to see some Ebersol representation with the Don Rickles episode. It's a pretty solid list so far, and who knows, we might see some of these names again. So, yeah, it's a pretty good list. I might rearrange it a bit myself, but yeah.
All right, I love that. Steve, what about you? You said you've been following the countdown all the way through. How are you feeling about things? Steve, you're muted. Let's just make sure we got you.
I'll mute my mic here real quick. Oh, there we go. So far, I feel pretty good about it. I think most of the eras have been covered. I think by the way, I love that the Francis Ford Coppola episode from season 11 got on the list. I think yeah, any chance that SNL has a chance, anytime SNL has a chance to do like a big concept episode, I'm glad it kind of got rewarded. I don't know if I would put it at 10, but I did like that it made the list. I mean, recency bias, I think, is to be expected. I think maybe a lot of the patron community might be coming in with the last 10 seasons, but really all eras are represented to some degree. So I think overall, by and large, I think the patrons and those who voted have got it right, and maybe with a couple of exceptions to quibble at, but overall it's been solid.
Jeffrey, let me go over to you. How are you feeling about the list right now?
Yeah, I think agree with everyone else that in terms of all eras being well represented, that's been heartening to see. The one thing I guess that kind of sticks out to me in a bad way, or is a mildly disappointing way, is the relative lack of late '90s Will Ferrell era. I mean, there's a few episodes from there, but I mean, that's definitely one of the, at least I think, and I don't think I'm the only one who thinks this, I think that's one of the strongest eras in the show's history. But I mean, that could be a case of it was so consistent all those years that, there were hardly any terrible episodes. Maybe just a few really stick out as among the greatest. And that might also be true of the first 5 seasons as well. But yeah, overall, there's a few episodes here and there that would be like, oh, that should be higher, that should be lower, but nothing that makes me angry. And even if I disagreed with the list completely, I would still find it interesting.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I definitely think that even through general SNL discourse, that era seems to get pretty shafted compared to some others. It's just, the fact that, I don't know, I guess it's just not considered a golden era. I think probably the era coming off of season 20, it felt refreshed, but then it really focused heavily on recurring characters. And I think that maybe people got to know the characters almost better than the cast members. And in, retrospect, that might have taken away from some of the episodes and being able to parse through, well, like every episode has a cheerleaders or a celebrity Jeopardy. Maybe it's hard to parse through which are better than the others. And maybe it just never came together the way that some of the other great eras do. So I think it's a very fascinating point, and we'll see if any other episodes from that era pop up here on the countdown. So those are the first 41 reveals here on the countdown. And now it's time to get into number 9 here on the list. So very excited to dive into this next episode. Definitely has one of the most iconic sketches in the history of the show. So much so that you might say, let's make a documentary about it. Let's talk about Christopher Walken and Christina Aguilera from April 8th, 2000. The very, very famous More Cowbell sketch is included in this one, season 25, episode 16. Bill Kenny, a lot of people have been suspecting this one might pop up, and we get another Walken here on the countdown.
We always need more Walken. I've got a fever for Walken. This makes sense here, and it's not just because of Cowbell. So that's always really, since the beginning of this countdown, that's been what's been the most heartening thing, is when an episode makes it and it's not just about the sketch that's so famous, because I think from front to back, this is a fantastic episode. There's so many great sketches in here. We get the return of a recurring character. We get some topical stuff, but I think there's some really, really good stuff here to dive into. And it's a very Walken-esque episode, as of course it is.
Yeah, I think it's my favorite Christopher Walken episode. It's one that not only, like when we talked at the beginning, all the way back 12 weeks ago, about like episodes that have one iconic moment and how much they elevate an episode onto the countdown. I don't know that one applies here. I think that there's just so many great things in this episode. Casey, let me get your thoughts on this.
Cowbell is definitely a sketch that earned its all-time classic status. I mean, it's in 2 different best ofs, Ferrell and Walken, just due to its sheer levels of high, goofy commitment physically and emotionally to such a silly, stupidly small detail. It's like, it's one of those sketches where you can tell this will become, you can tell you're watching a future classic in the making as you watch this live, because it feels unique and different from anything else the show is doing right now. Just very silly universal appeal humor, and I can tell from that. I could tell that when I was 9 when I first saw it. Even this is way before streaming. You can't watch a sketch on YouTube, you have to see the rerun or a best of tape or something. So it's a perfect, just a perfect silly sketch that can be enjoyed by SNL fans of all ages.
It definitely is. Jeffrey, how do you feel about this episode overall and its place here on the Countdown at 9?
So yeah, we've mentioned the Cowbell sketch, obviously iconic, perhaps maybe the most iconic sketch in SNL history. But I would argue it is not the funniest sketch on this episode. So, I'm agreeing with Bill here in that it's from top to bottom pretty solid. I kind of had a memory of when I watched it, 25 years ago, that it was really just a couple of sketches that were great and then the rest was okay. But rewatching it, I'm like, no, actually, it was even better than I remembered. I think there might have been a couple of sketches that I maybe hadn't seen before that had gotten edited out of the hour-long version, which aren't as strong, but still, overall, a solid choice for a top 10 episode.
Steve, do you feel like this one landed in the right spot on the list?
Yeah, I think I would be honest with you. I think it might be a little bit underrated compared to where it is at 9. I would put it just outside of the top 5. Now, of course, not knowing what the top 6 will be, that of course we'll find out. But I'll say this, and I'm glad to hear Bill say that this is a great episode, top to bottom, because honestly, I've been thinking about it as I rewatched the episode. Like, if we replaced Cowbell with a replacement level sketch, I think this is still a top 30 to 35 episode of all time. Like, just based on some of the sketches we'll talk about. The cold open, which featured Dana Carvey, a great sketch that was after updates that I absolutely loved, and we'll obviously talk about that as we go. But Cowbell just elevates it and just brings it to another level. And yeah, it's my favorite of the Walken episodes. But Walken just has that way of elevating an okay sketch to a good sketch, a good to a great, and a great to the greatest of all time.
So let's start with Cowbell, because that is the iconic sketch that I think people will always remember from not only this episode, but probably this era. It is, lovingly referred to as more Cowbell from most of the fandom, but it is actually a VH1 behind the music parody, looking at the Blue Oyster Cult and talking about their Don't Fear the Reaper song. And you get into it. And of course, there's, we're never going to do justice the whole story to this. There was, as I alluded to, an entire documentary that talked about this one specific sketch that came out earlier this year. But just there's a lot of elements that really make this one work, including Will Ferrell, who is at the height of his powers, just going all out and putting up that shirt just a little bit higher. Christopher Walken's pronunciation of everything that he's saying throughout this. And then you get all of the guys back there, not only, Parnell, the Iceman, keeping it straight, but Jimmy also laughing, Horatio there as well. Like there's some really good things. And you almost get that balance of like, what makes SNL really great, what makes SNL so great because it's live, where you get Will Ferrell ramping things up. And this, to me, ends up being absolutely a top 10 sketch of all time. Bill Kenny, let's do our overall thoughts on Behind the Music.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this so much, but this is, to me, not only a top 10 all-time sketch, but probably the most quotable. Like I've said this before, where my friends and I were not pulling just I've got a fever and what everybody was saying, but like don't fear the Reaper, and Catan saying, what does that mean? Like these were things that were just kind of overtaking our lives. Every time we talked, this was something that we were quoting. And yeah, I mean, people probably don't remember of a certain age, but Behind the Music was a huge show. VH1 at the time was showing these probably 10 to 12 hours a day. And, the Leif Garrett one was really popular. And, I think there was a Salt and Pepper, but I might be making that up. I might still have residue from the Mulaney episode we talked about a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, Behind the Music was very, very big. So this made sense here. Playing that theme song as they broke into this. Will is just the best. And even though Walken hates it, which kind of disheartens me, they talk about that in the documentary that came out in February. It ruined his life because people go up to him and talk about this all the time. He's the perfect guy for this. And this was supposed to be in which episode, John, earlier in the season? Was it
Ooh.
Norm?
I heard it was Norm. Yeah.
I think it was Norm. Yeah. You can't imagine. I mean, as great as Norm was, like, can you imagine Norm playing this part? No, this is Walken, tried and true. So yeah, it's very well deserving in all the accolades that it's gotten throughout the years.
Yeah, I always talk about this when Christopher Walken episodes or him landing on the host countdown comes up. There is something about a Walken episode that it almost feels like they write parts around the way that he says things. And that's something that is unique to him. Maybe Adam Driver is the closest one that I could think of in the history of the show that has that. So whenever you watch a Walken episode, you're always looking for the ones that are like, okay, they started with Walken's voice and the way he says words to then develop the sketch around it. And I don't feel that that was this at all. This is actually something that is just completely written, and then he jumps inside of it and makes it so much better, and it just elevates to the moon. So Casey, would love your thoughts on Behind the Music. Casey, you're muted, so I just want to get you in.
Oh, yeah. So this definitely works with everyone else's sheer thunderous commitment clash with just Walken's strange otherworldness. I mean, probably the biggest laugh would be when Walken tells him to, Gene, really explore the space. I mean, really, followed by him just gyrating his gut around. And it's another Fallon crack up, but you can kind of see why he did it after Catan just yells, "Don't blow this for us, Gene," after they're getting into a big blowout fight over how professional this Cowbell player is. Somehow Horatio doesn't crack up on camera when he says he speaks for all of us. Even Farrell himself cracks up, and that's only like one of two possible times I can think of that happened during his run on the show. But just the over the top commitment of it really sold it for me. And a couple of fun facts I want to get to. Crew member, musical technician Speedy Rosenthal can be faintly seen behind the background glass in this sketch, and that and Sandler's shout out to him during his 50th anniversary song are to this day his only on-camera appearances on the show. And the guy that Chris Parnell plays in this, Eric Bloom, the lead singer of Blue Oyster Cult, I actually sat next to the real Eric Bloom at a Weird Al Yankovic concert in Denver a few years ago, but that's a story for another time. Let's just say I have a connection in the Weird Al fan community who offered me a backstage pass and some upgraded seats. But yeah, any way you examine this, anything you can pick out, just an all-time banger that just works, just always works.
Yeah, and I love that we said it's one of the most quotable sketches of all time. I think it probably is. I would be curious if chat had any ideas of other sketches that would match the amount that this one has been quoted, but quoted by all generations in a way. It doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, this is specific to one age group. Jeffrey, what are your overall thoughts on More Cowbell?
Well, for me personally, one memory I have is I used to have a More Cowbell t-shirt. I think I wore it out a bit and gave it to Goodwill at some point. Otherwise, I would have worn it tonight. But I remember when I was in college, one of my cross-country teammates said, "Oh, nice shirt." So it's like a secret comedy handshake that, it doesn't work just between comedy nerds. Like, everyone knows this, even the people, like, it's probably for a lot of people they've ever seen. So yeah, if you show your love of More Cowbell in some way, it's proof that you have at least a smidgen of a decent sense of humor. So yeah, that's what I think of it. That's what I think its strongest legacy is. And to take it back to the beginning a bit and the theme of quotability, the line that opens it, Daryl Hammond's voiceover, is after a series of staggering defeats. As Will Ferrell notes in the Peacock documentary about this sketch, what the hell does that even mean? But yeah, like, just it's a perfectly nonsensical way to set the whole thing up that, even that what could have been an afterthought of a line is perfectly written as well.
Also, one of the most famous things about More Cowbell, which I don't know that they went into in full detail. I watched the documentary, but it was obviously back in February. But one of the most famous things is that nobody truly knows who wrote the sketch. Most people say it is Will Ferrell, and he said, like, yeah, that was my idea and I came up with it. And Parnell has said, like, yeah, I added some lines or whatever. But it's just like, it is very rare and unlikely that one cast member writes a sketch in this form. Like, sometimes a cast member will come in with something, or especially if they have an update piece or a character. But like, the way that this all came together, there's definitely some writers that are involved, but because of Will's like exuberance, he is like, the lore has been that Will Ferrell wrote this. So that's just one thing I've always found super fascinating about this moment. Steve, for you, what does More Cowbell Behind the Music mean to you?
I don't know what else I can add that really hasn't been added by about 1,000 people with this. I mean, I think back to the first time I saw More Cowbell, which was during season 25, and that was really around the prime time that I was really getting into SNL fandom. And the first time I saw the sketch and I saw them break into Don't Fear the Reaper, when I saw Will hitting the how, I'm like, this is going to be about the cowbell, isn't it? And it was. And it's just, honestly, I was just pitted to find out that there was no Gene Frankel. I mean, that guy didn't exist. So that was really my. Other than that, there's. I mean, everybody has said how great the sketch is, and I feel the same way.
There's also a really great moment when Will Ferrell hosts in season 30 where he plays Gene Frankel one more time. And I think it's during a performance by Queens of the Stone Age, and he'll pop up in the background and play that. So that's another great moment there. But yeah, seriously, one of the best sketches ever, and truly great to see it in this episode. Let's take you through the entirety of this episode so we can see if the rest of the episode does truly stack up according to Bill Kenny. So as Steve said before, this is an episode that starts with a pretty big cameo where we have George W. Bush, who's there, and he's getting ready to run for president. And we know that we're going to have a big election season in 2000, just a few months away from that. And here he's getting ready for his debates with Al Gore. We know who the candidates are. And in comes Dana Carvey as his father, George H.W. Bush, to talk to him and prepare him. And great to see these two characters side by side. We're going to see them a little bit more in season 26, but at the time, very cool to get George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. Together. And I think people liked the impression that Will Ferrell was, building towards with Bush with the bro-y stuff, but it didn't match the iconicness of Dana Carvey's H.W. Bush. But when you see them together, okay, we got something here. It really feels like there's chemistry. There's some side-by-side things that are working. And it did feel like a passing of the torch in a way in terms of great political impressions, Bill. This was an awesome cold open.
So good, and bringing two of my favorite cast members from two different eras together, I know at the time was just very, very thrilling. It was still fairly new to do this kind of thing, certainly not on the level that they've done it over the last 10 or 15 years, bringing these cameos in. So yeah, I was very happy to see this. I mean, Dana is just one of the best presidential impressions of all time with Bush Sr. And of course, Will is on his way. This is the 5th time he's done it. This feels like really the first time that he's kind of hitting it on all beats. Like, the first couple times you see it, it's very, like you said, John, very frat bro-y. Like, it's not all formed. And Dana had the same issue doing Bush Sr. The first couple times you see that, he doesn't have all the beats yet. But yeah, hearing Will say Dana's famous lines like "not gonna do it" and things like that were really, really key to this. We get this one more time in an episode in the fall. But yeah, seeing these two icons together is something that I really, really look forward to and was happy to watch again.
And I absolutely love that sketch in the fall, too, where we get this sort of like of mice and men situation between the two Bushes. But this one is really great. And it is only the 5th time that Will Ferrell plays George Bush here. Casey, do you have great memories of this cold open? Casey, just unmute yourself so we could hear you. Thanks.
Yeah, I do have strong memories of this cold open when I first saw it. It was nice to see Dana Carvey's Bush again. I think Dana was recovering from some health problems and just wanted to come back and be funny. And he does do the heavy lifting here because Farrell's W isn't quite fully formed. It's just a Southern goofball, daddy's frat boy. And Carvey was in his element because it seemed like he had some people from his era writing for him. You can tell it was written by someone who knew how to play to his strengths, someone like Jim Downey or Robert Smigel. So it played just as well as it would back during the Bush presidency. One great line I liked in particular on gun control was W is not sure about gun control, but there's no better feeling than tying on a 3-beer buzz and firing off a sawed-off old 12 gauge into a beat-up old tractor. And HW says, Lord have mercy, that is bad. Don't say that. And Carvey's saying, I know you young people want to be hip like the Backstreet Boys and Christina Aguilera. One thing that makes this feel quaint and really from a different era is that this and pretty much all the political sketches from season 25 that I've seen, their basic take is that once it came down to Bush and Gore, it was more same old, same old. These two men are too similar to each other, how they're different, just establishment politicians, because to win an election, you can't really speak your mind. You got to suck up to everyone, be as vague as possible. You can't be a Bill Bradley or John McCain being the brash guy that's a straight talker and always speaks his mind. Well, we're way past that. John McCain came close, but after him, someone came so frighteningly close that they got it. And that man is in the White House again, still speaking his mind to a very terrifying degree and being the straight talker that couldn't have won 25 years ago when he was a Reform Party third party candidate. And now we get politics that are real life politics that are like parodies of themselves. So yeah, SNL is kind of taken on the bland centrist role where all their sketches about Trump are the same, and they don't have too much of a bite. They don't really say much other than just Orange Man bad. So it's just very interesting and frightening how the tables have turned, and SNL speaks less and less truth to power when this country really needs it.
You know, so I want to mention about the writer of this cold open. I believe it was T-Shawn Shannon who wrote this one, but I think that there was I'm sure there was contributions from people from Dana's era who knew how to write for this, because that totally makes sense. Steve, I want to get your take on this cold open as well.
Really enjoyed it. I mean, am I muted now?
No, you're good, right? Steve. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I thought I unmuted myself. I mean, it's just two iconic characters doing this wonderful cold open. I love the first image, like right off the beginning, where you see I think it's like the Texas State House, and then you see like a keg, and like Will is like tapping into it as George W. Bush, and it's like tapping a beer that's like 80% head, and he just goes, "Oh, I'm going to be president." That's so wicked. And it's just like I'm glad he's established the character, and I felt like this getting Dana in there to be George H.W. Bush allowed Will to sort of establish the George W. sort of hillbilly ethos character that George W. Bush was. I again, a really great open, and just so fun to see these two characters perform in this way.
Yeah. I totally agree. Casey mentioned that Dana was having some health issues at the time. So I believe, if I recall correctly, in season 24, Dana was supposed to host the show. And there was some sort of budget cut situation where John Goodman ends up being the only host in April from that year. And I think that shortly after, he had some sort of heart issue. So because of that, it was a very scary situation. And then they ended up, obviously having him back here, and he would host in season 26. So there is this nice story of him coming back to the show, even though I don't know that everyone at the time knew what was going on. Jeffrey, your thoughts on seeing Dana Carvey and Will Ferrell together?
Yeah, it'd been a while since I'd rewatched this sketch, and I was very pleased to see how well formed Will Ferrell's W impression was. It wasn't quite what it would become when he became really iconic his last couple of seasons. But yeah, overall, it was just, I mean, it's a two-hander between two masters, possibly the two best political impressions in SNL history. There's some other contenders in there, but these are definitely two of the best. And from an era where you didn't have a ton of big name cameos coming in like this, whereas it happens pretty much every episode nowadays. So it definitely felt like a special thing, a rare thing, and one that still holds up 25 years later.
So really awesome cold open to start off the show. One of my favorite cold opens, and certainly feels like things are going really well to start things off. We get a very classic Christopher Walken song-a-log here, where he sings about Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week. It's his fourth time hosting. We get the women of SNL behind him. This is typical Walken stuff, so won't get into too much, since we did cover a little bit of this in the previous Walken episodes here on the countdown. That will follow with the more Cowbell sketch, which will then go into a musical. A lot of music in this episode, but we get into some music, and this might be a little bit dated, so I'm going to try for all of our younger listeners to explain what's going on here. This is a musical called Eliane the Cuban Way, with Christopher Walken as Fidel Castro. So basically, in 1999, a 5-year-old Cuban boy named Elian Gonzalez was found, I think he was clinging to some sort of tube on the coast of Florida, when his mom and some other people drowned trying to flee Cuba. He was then taken in by some relatives in Miami who wanted him to stay in the U.S. as a symbol of freedom from communism. But Elian's father, who lived in Cuba, demanded that he would come back to Cuba. And this turned into like a huge international custody and political battle between Cuban exiles in Miami and the US government and Fidel Castro's Cuba. It got all over the news and in the media, and there was like protests and legal fights. And people just, by the time in April 2000, there was like cameras at their homes and all of this, until he was eventually reunited with his father and sent back to Cuba, where he would end up growing up. So this was like the biggest story of the time, Bill. And of course, they're going to cover it here with the musical.
Yeah, it's really funny to go back and watch this. Some topical stuff is just kind of a slog to get through. This is funny in hindsight, because it's just, this dominated in an era when this could dominate for months, as opposed to our cycle now where it's maybe 15, 20 minutes. This went on for a long time, I can tell you. And, the legal battle that went on, there's famous pictures of Elian being hidden in the closet in his uncle's house or his aunt's house. And apparently he grew up to be a fine person, even though he went back to Cuba. Colin even references it at Weekend Update, including ending Weekend Update with Elian Gonzalez instead of his normal closing tagline. This was huge. This was a really big deal. A whole lot of nothing burger as far as like, are we really talking about one person, one kid who got here from Cuba, as opposed to all the problems in the world and the country? But it's funny to go back and watch this for sure.
Steve, what was your opinion on the Alien, the Cuban Boy musical we saw?
A couple character choices I really liked out of that. First off, I mean, Walken as Castro was quite funny. Nice musical chops there. I loved Rachel Dratch in the sketch as Elian Gonzalez. Played this sort of like all-American Dennis the Menace, bib overalls and a frog in his pocket, and it's like, that I enjoyed. The Elian Gonzalez thing with Weekend Update, Bill, you mentioned, was the first joke was that you have to mention Elian Gonzalez every 10 minutes. So he was referencing it at the end after that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You mentioned it. Sometimes it does feel like a bit of a slog, but this was kind of goofy, and yes, it's of its era, but it doesn't play totally dated, I don't feel like.
Yeah, that's interesting. Casey, do you feel like it does?
It doesn't play dated because it is a big musical sketch. It's like this episode has a good rundown, the ideal rundown to keep the viewer's energy up and engaged. Like the two big post monologue musical sketches, one timeless one very much of its time. But the second one is really put over by talent and charisma. There's a duet by Walken and Gasteyer as Elian's American relative, which they have the singing chops to pull off. And then there's a scene between Will as Janet Reno and Catan as an actor playing Elian's father. And it's a low-key love ballad that cuts away right between right when a man and a man in drag kiss. So it works. It's it's entertaining even without the context of the time or the story it's from. And it ends with Dratch as the Leave It to Beaver type Elian riding a dolphin. So that's always, and it's like a parody of like a trend started by Titanic, where they kind of whitewash and bastardize stories of real American tragedies. So it's kind of going for that, but there's just so much musical talent and flash and pomposity to distract you from that.
Yeah, it is a fascinating time capsule. I believe that this sketch has been brought up before on Seth Meyers' late night show, where he talked about, I think they had Harper Steele on to talk, who wrote this sketch, to talk about this one at one point, and mentioned that they would love to just like bring it back with where Elian is now. So just funny thought there. Then we're going to get a Continental sketch, of course, because Christopher Walken is hosting the show. So we'll have the 4th edition of the Continental, which is great to get to see this character back and to hear Phil Hartman's voice. I personally love this edition of the Continental. I always have. The whole like wowie, wow, 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 as he's going through the sketch, the bit in the bathroom mirror, just like the fearlessness that we get from the Continental in this one, I feel like is put up to an extreme as he gets like punched in the face and maced and all of that. So I always felt like this was a great edition of the Continental. Jeffrey, how did you feel about this one?
I'm always surprised at how well the Continental works for me, because it's pretty much the same thing each time. And I'm like, are they really going to get away with it? Or are they really going to get away with another edition of this this creepy character? But I mean, Walken is always so charming, and yeah, he's just having fun with it. And then you have a nice little callback at I think this is from that episode with the Good Nights, where you have the camera person come in and do the gloved hand coming up to everyone. So that's, I think you got to, when talking about this edition of the Continental, you have to also talk about that and not just the sketch proper. So I guess, I don't know, maybe at this point they kind of realized at the show, this sketch has reached iconic status.
Yeah, I love that reveal that they sort of do, where you get rewarded for watching the show all the way through to the Good Nights to see how the camera does it. I think that's like an incredible aspect of this sketch. This will be followed by a pre-tape about Viagra, which had gotten pretty popular over the last year, except this pre-tape is written, or commercial is written, from the perspective of the women who are thanking Viagra sarcastically for what it has done to their husbands. It's just a lot of, gee, thanks for this, Viagra. And it's very cute. It's very funny. Probably most notable for featuring Tina Fey before she is a cast member. She had appeared in a bunch of monologues and stuff, but this was a more prominent role for her right before she's going to end up taking over the update desk in just a little bit. So this was a fun commercial that we had here, Bill.
Yeah, getting to see Tina before all the fame. Obviously, as you said, she's in a bunch of monologues, but a lot of unknowns in this. But fun fact, Phil Himes, a longtime lighting director, is also in this. Yeah, it's funny to talk about dated. I mean, Viagra is part of the culture now, and not talked about kind of as wild as it was back then. But yeah, 97 through 2000, we were really getting a, like, I can't believe this exists, and all these old men, Bob Dole selling it, and all of that at the time. So yeah, it is a little dated, but very funny.
Yeah, Steve, you have memories of what was going on back then?
Unfortunately, yes, that Bob Dole commercial that Bill just mentioned. Yeah, no, it was great to see Tina Fey in a role before she became, while she was head writer of the show, and yeah, and those are basically my memories of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. This will be followed by a talk show sketch. I dare anybody to remember the Jenny Jones talk show. It is one that you do, Bill? You have good memories of the Jenny Jones talk show?
I didn't say good memories, John.
Okay. I feel like this is one that I had to squint into and be like, wait, what was that again? I mean, there was just like a million talk shows given to some very random people at the time. And I'm like, it took me a second to just be like, oh yeah, okay, no, this actually existed. But it's one of those classic talk shows where they're going to bring on people who, and this was a show, by the way, that aired from 91 to 2003. But they're going to bring on like people who were picked on during high school. And it's like, take a look at what they look like now. And it's sort of like that trashy TV that you would get then. So there's almost like that game that's going on here. We get people on stage and then people being brought out to get reactions from. But then there's a second game that's Christopher Walken in the audience, who's talked to by Jenny Jones to give reaction, who is like basically this sort of like 90s, like using 90s like hip hop slang, where he keeps saying like, check yourself until you wreck yourself, dream your dream. And it is one of those things that I talked about at the beginning of the show, as like sometimes there's sketches that are just written to get Christopher Walken to say certain things. And that's how I felt about this one, because it is so funny to me just to see him in the way that he does this. Casey, I laugh at this sketch every time I see it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some problematic elements of it. I mean, Walken plays kind of the reverse of a talk show host from about 5 seasons earlier in a sketch called Connie Stinson Talks. And now he's an audience member saying, ridiculous AAVE tinged things. And then we bring out some old, so like freaks turn hotties confronting their old high school bullies. And I like the scene with, between Parnell and O'Terry, where Parnell used to be obese, and now he's lost a ton of weight by his own diet of just nothing but Pedialyte and candy necklaces for a year. And then he got scurvy, and now he is an exotic dancer at a club called Bulges. And then O'Terry's just like, I got 19 kids and I'm on welfare. I need a real man. And then in response to that, Walken says, Ray Stockton takes care of his business. And then it ends on a reveal that Catan was one of the freaks who is now a trans woman. But the best thing you can say about that is that Tracy Morgan's character, as her former bully, is more accepting of her. So we'll just leave it at that. And I'll just say that most of my memories of the Jenny Jones show are just other parodies of the Jenny Jones show that Mad TV did with Mo Collins. But that's the other show, and we're not supposed to talk about that here.
That's very true. The chat was going a little crazy, and I was like trying to figure out what was going on, and then I completely forgot. And they reminded me about this like insane tragedy that happened on the Jenny Jones show, where a guest murdered another guest. I completely now I'm just like mind blown, because I forgot that was this show. Of course, that's not parodied in the sketch here, and this is like a few years later than that. But interesting choice of talk show that they decided to go ahead with for this one, because it didn't have to be the Jenny Jones show. It could have been like any show that they could have chosen at the time. Steve, any thoughts on this sketch?
I feel like I did see this in one other episode, because with Rachel Dratch, because I do remember her saying, "Here's a local crappy house band to take us to break." For me, with this sketch, honestly, if it's not for Walken, the sketch feels unmemorable to me. I feel like it's Walken interjecting with like, "You're a player hater. You got to be a player participator." Without those lines, I feel like the sketch doesn't do much for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree. Without Walken, this sketch is just it's probably not great. I do feel like Fallon is doing his best Sandler in this sketch. If you go back and you listen to that bit, let's go to Weekend Update. We're still in the era of the show where Weekend Update is going to appear before the musical guest. This is something that they were doing and experimenting with around these seasons as the network executives who had sort of stopped being involved with the show after season 23, but had some influence on the fact that they felt like there was a drop off when the musical appearance came on. So this time they're going to do Weekend Update first. And the only correspondent we're going to get in this edition of Colin Quinn's Weekend Update is Jacob Silge, the voice modulation character from Will Ferrell, who was born 2 months late and allergic to gold dust, and he cannot speak quietly. And of course, one of the funniest Will Ferrell characters ever, Bill.
Yeah, and I feel almost forgotten to time. I know he brought it back in 43 when he hosted, but this is a great character for him. And just him jabbing Colin and I wish this on no one but you. Oh, that was sorry. That was supposed to be under my breath. The can't control my volume of my voice has been done before, obviously in Austin Powers, but this works here because Will just elevates it to a level that only Will Ferrell can. And again, as I said earlier, we get a lot of Elian Gonzalez jokes. So makes sense here. There's a lot of topical stuff. Obviously, Update's always topical, but we get a lot of census talk, which is going to come up after Update as well.
Yeah, and is this our first Colin Quinn anchored update edition on the countdown? I'd have to go back and check that. I think
you guys did do Alec Baldwin season 24, so
You're
I think
right,
there's
yeah.
at least one more.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Jeffrey, what do you think of Jacob Silge as a character?
He's one of my favorite Will Ferrell characters, and that's saying something because Will Ferrell is my favorite SNL cast member. He's kind of one of those where it's like, if you start talking like this and people recognize what you're doing, you're like, okay, this is someone who loves SNL as much as I do. And my dad, my brother, and we've kind of become adept at spotting people with voice modulation in the wild. Like there are naturally loud talkers out there, and now we can say they suffer from. We can treat them more kindly because we know they're not just rude; they're suffering from an actual disease that as many as 6 other people suffer from. So a nice bit of comedic advocacy there.
Definitely one of the best diseases ever that Jacob Silge has. So that is the only correspondent here on Update. Christina Aguilera is going to perform music after this. She'll perform "I Turn to You," and then does "At Last" later on in the night, and "What a Girl Wants," her hit at the time. Beautiful pipes on Christina Aguilera, obviously. I'll say at the time I was a little bit more of a Britney Spears guy, but still, like Aguilera, looking back on this, what, Bill?
Oh, you were shipping your boy and her. Come on. We know why, John.
You know it. But Christina, obviously incredible and great stuff here. She would later go on to host as well. So yeah, there you go. That's the music for the night. We also get a pretty, I'm going to say this is an iconic sketch from an SNL perspective. It's called Census Taker. This is a sketch where Tim Meadows is going to go ring the bell of Christopher Walken in his home where he lives with his wife, who's really just a bobcat, who works all day. Depends what your parameters of all day are. And Tim Meadows is asking, just normal questions, and the answers are unbelievable from Christopher Walken. This is a very famous Tina Fey written sketch that would later be brought back with Betty White in season 35. Obviously, the story, there was like, I just wanted to bring this back. She was the perfect person to bring this back for. But at the time, I feel like this is the sketch that, though all the hype was around more Cowbell, all of like the comedy community, the sketch writers were like, whoa, what was that? That was really funny. And I think we got an all-timer here, guys. So I want to start with Steve on this one. What did you think of Census Taker?
I love this sketch so much. Just the ridiculousness. Again, it's just another full-on Walken sketch. I love like the first question being, how many people live in your house? 80. And then he goes, 80 people live in your apartments? not really 80, more like 4. And then like it just goes from there. Like he's counting house plants and he's counting candy bars as people, and then yes, the definition of all day. It's like, well, not all day, more like 9 to 5. Or part-time, but 9 to 5. There's whole parts of the day where I'm asleep. So yeah, no, the wordplay is just so good. I this low key, there are times where I like the sketch more than Cowbell. Yeah, I love going back and revisiting this one.
Yeah, I think there's an argument that this is even a better sketch than Cowbell. Maybe not greater, but better if you're able to like parse through those two things. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on it?
So I said at the top of our discussion of this episode, there's a sketch that I think is better than Cowbell, and this was the one I was referring to. There was a time I could probably recite this sketch word for word. I saw it. We saw it. I saw it a bunch of times whenever this episode was rerun on Comedy Central. It was also part of the Best of Tim Meadows special. I mean, you think of this as mainly a Walken sketch. He's delivering all the crazy lines, but Meadows doing some of the most hilarious straight man work I've ever seen. And yeah, I mean, I have such enjoy a fond personal history with this sketch where I would be reciting it to friends like during track practice, or telling my college roommate, like, I know you love Cowbell, but there's another sketch. You might not believe me, but it's even funnier than Cowbell. You got to watch it. So there was that fun of it. Like, it was a little secret for years. Maybe it even still is to some SNL fans. Maybe not everyone knows this, but yeah, in an era before easy streaming the next day, this could live underground but still beloved for years.
Casey, how did you feel about this one, The Census Taker?
Yeah, a lot of pressure on this. I really want to win that car, John, but but seriously, I mean, this does rival Census Taker in terms of hilarity, just for the sheer volume of insane details packed into one sketch. I like the bit where he says he has dual citizenship to the United States and Florida. Florida's part of the United States. Well, I was issued this passport to Florida when I turned 50. This is a joke birthday card that just says you're over the hill. Welcome to Florida. Passports don't have cartoons of sexy nurses on them. But yeah, he's got a pretty sweet wife, Bobcat, pretty sweet life and wife, Bobcat, ball and chain and all.
Bill, I don't think we've ever talked about this sketch, so I'd love to know your perspective on it.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of Bill lore to start out with here. To make extra money in 2000, I was a census taker on the phone. I did not go door to door. So, but there is relatable stuff here. Nothing to this level of insanity, but talking to people and trying to get straight answers out of them as far as, you know, their household and things like that was always kind of a tough stretch. Yeah, very, very funny. Everything that everybody said here. And when did you move in? Clinton was president, maybe an hour ago. It's great line here. Yeah, I mean, very Walken-esque. Another sketch that you can't imagine too many people being able to do. Obviously, Betty does it justice 10 years later, but this is very Walken-esque, as everything has been so far.
Did anyone you speak to live with a bobcat?
They did not, no.
Okay, too bad, because that would have been epic. But yeah, this is an absolutely epic sketch. So go back and check this one out if you haven't in a while. The final sketch of the night that we're going to get, well, the show will end with a musical performance, but right before that, we get our final sketch of the night, which is a beauty pageant sketch with Brett Lighthorse there as Christopher Walken's character, who is basically there to introduce different, beauty pageant contestants before Sally O'Malley is going to come out. That is the late in her career new character for Molly Shannon, who is there just basically to interrupt proceedings and do Sally O'Malley things and exclaim that she's 50. So, Bill, anything here on Sally O'Malley from Molly?
They're all very samey, but this one's pretty good because of Sherry and Anna as Miss Greenwood Hills and Miss I-90 interchange, sorry, and Miss Clarksdale Mall. Yeah, I mean, the best thing you could say about the Sallies is that they always kind of juke you. You don't know where it's going until about 2 or 3 minutes into it, and then the reveal is there. So these other characters get a chance to breathe before you bring in the Molly Shannon of it all. But yeah, I mean, these are pretty good, but nothing very different from the other ones that we've seen.
Yeah, pretty decent stuff from this. I always liked this character. Always thought it was very funny. I do think that some of the appearances we've gotten more recently of the character do make me laugh more than when I saw it to begin with. And I don't know why. I don't know if I could put an exact reason on it. Maybe it's just because she is actually, in fact, older, and to see her stretch in the way that she does, or the way that she hikes up her pants. I think back to the one where she hosted for the first time with The Sopranos. That one is a really, really great sketch. Or the most recent one she did with the Jonas Brothers. I also think just like now, just seeing her, camel toe it up, that is, it's like a sight to see. So I think that there's a little difference here from then till now. But honestly, really, really fun stuff to end the night. Like nothing to below the rest of the night. So yeah, really only 12 segments in this one, but all of them are pretty great. I think that this is one of those episodes we could put in the category of some of the others we've seen in this countdown of like top to bottom, a really great one. I would love to know overall from the panel, after talking it through, how do we feel like its place is at 9? Is it well-deserved? Is it too high? Is it too low? So Casey, I'll ask you first.
Its place in the top 10 is well deserved, because it was a very solid episode through and through. Walken pretty much carries it, and you can tell when he's around, he's gonna add something unique to every sketch, and he did. I would put it a little bit higher than number 9, though, because there is more of a timeless quality to it that makes it age well, that we may not get with certain other episodes or sketches in this countdown. But it's as long as it's in the top 10, it's deserving of its spot.
Jeffrey, I'll go to you. How do you feel about this one? Too high, too low, or just right?
About just right, probably. Especially compared to what's come before. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I do think I enjoyed this episode more than most of the sketches that have come up so far in the countdown. And I mean, it's fitting the formula of what you hope a great SNL episode would be, which is 2 classic sketches, then like 5 solid to great sketches, and no duds. Jenny Jones and the Sally O'Malley aren't terrific, but they both have their moments. So yeah, nothing terrible. The baseline is pretty high. So yeah, good enough that I can't complain about this position.
Steve, how do you feel about this position on the countdown?
I think, yeah, it's roughly in that just right position. I think maybe even a touch low. I would put it somewhere between 5 and 10. 9's right where it is. As Jeffrey said, there's no bad sketch in this episode. There's a couple that I may like more than others. Obviously, there's Cowbell. There's Census Taker, which is in those classic range. You have a great cold open, classic monologue, the Continental's classic, and a solid musical guest in Christina Aguilera, who hit every single note, literally, actually. So yeah, I like the placement. Maybe, like I said, if anything, it's probably a little too low.
So I think it's a little high. I really love this. I do think this is like 100% solid, a top 15 episode of all time. There's just like, I think when we're getting into the top 10, and maybe this is the difference why I think this is maybe why some people won't love my personal rankings at the end of this, but this is just how I feel about it. There's like can you tell the story of SNL without this episode that makes an episode super iconic? And I definitely think it has those qualities because it has more Cowbell in it. I just think that there's like a lot of episodes that are like tentpole episodes. And I just feel like this one is one, but it may be like lower than some of the other ones that come throughout it. Like there's just some really iconic episodes. So for me, I think it's just like a touch high, but only barely. Bill, am I crazy?
Yeah, you're crazy, John. This hits all the marks, as everyone said. At this point in the countdown, it has to be no duds. I've said that since 50. We've obviously had some situations where even last week where, there's a dud sketch. It has to be good to great from top to bottom. And I think we get that here. And you have to, at this point in the top 10, you also have to have, I think, a musical guest. We've been giving bonus points. And Christina does that. Aguilera does that here. So I really, really enjoy this one from beginning to end. I think this is deserving of its spot.
Aguilera. That's a wild pronunciation.
That's what they said in the cold open, John.
Oh, okay. My bad. I'm sorry. I missed that. That went over my head. But yeah, I just going back to my point here. Maybe I am being crazy, but I almost feel like maybe it's an indication of why this era doesn't have so many episodes in the countdown, because does the perception of the era change if you take this episode out of it? Does the story of the show change? I think that's almost something that I do feel maybe is missing and is unfair to the episode itself. However, from top to bottom, it's absolutely fantastic. It has a couple iconic sketches, no brainer, no doubt, top 15. I think I will think about the next few weeks of is this top 10 compared to some of the other ones that we have around it? But it's certainly very close. So there you go. That is our discussion of Christopher Walken and Christina Aguilera at number 9. Let's move into number 8 here on the list. Very excited to talk about this one from one of Bill's favorite hosts of all time, someone we have seen here on the countdown before. We're going to head forward in time to talk about the episode with maybe the most modern iconic sketch. We're going to talk about Tom Hanks and Lady Gaga from October 22nd, 2016, season 42, episode 4, the very famous David S. Pumpkins sketch here at number 8 on the countdown. Bill Kenny, your thoughts on this one landing here?
I can see how this got here. David Pumpkins, probably the last pop culture moment. I mean, Beavis and Butthead, you can argue. David Pumpkins overtook the world and outside of SNL. And you've got somebody like Tom Hanks, who's coming back for the first time in 10 years as a host, right before the election. You not only have this, but you have a lot of other great moments here, including an all-time moment between two of the greatest hosts in the history of the show, getting their own kind of two-hander. So yeah, I think this might be a touch high, but this is great to talk about for sure.
Yeah, this is the 4th Tom Hanks episode we have here on the countdown. We had the season 14, 15, and 16 episodes here from Hanks, but now we go all the way to, sort of the most modern episode that he hosted. He's going to host one of the at-home episodes, which does count, but still not into the fullest extent. So it is exciting to talk about Tom Hanks in a different era of the show. Casey, how do you feel about Hanks's episode landing here at number 8?
I feel like it's in an appropriate spot. It's right where it needs to be. At the same time, this episode as a whole is one of a few in this countdown that you really have to view as a time capsule, because it was a lot of it was very of the time that it aired. And while we're on the topic of David S. Pumpkins, yes, it is a classic, and I can see why, but it's not one of those sketches that you could tell was going to be a future classic in the moment, because it wasn't unique from what the show was doing at the time, because it was a Mikey Day, Streeter Seidel written sketch in the same vein as Kevin Roberts with Larry David and Space Pants with Peter Dinklage. So it was something that we've seen before, but it was also something that Tom Hanks just performed the absolute hell out of. Just any questions, and just really sold the hell out of it at a time when America was really looking to SNL for comfort and escape from what was going on in the world, because it was a really tense moment where people were really worried about the future of our country, where we're headed, but we'll talk about that later. It's just it was a classic sketch because it came out at the exact right time for America, as America was looking for something to cling to distract itself, and Halloween was coming up, so it tied into that. Another big distraction before the the big event. So that's how I feel about this episode's classic David S. Pumpkins.
You're definitely right to contextualize this episode. I think that we'll talk about the cold open in just a moment, but the fact is that we're very close to the election at this time in 2016. There's the third presidential debate that they're going to be parodying in this cold open. And I just remember, after David S. Pumpkins, like, you are watching it, you're right, Casey. And from an SNL perspective, this is, sort of a cookie cutter of some of the other things we've seen on the show recently. But, the fact that it was the host, the fact that it was Tom Hanks, who is just comfort food for a lot of people. I remember just seeing David S. Pumpkins for president after this sketch, because like people were just so excited about the character, and it was almost like this character became idolized in a way because people needed something to look at and to laugh at. So we'll talk about that sketch in just a moment. But overall, with this episode, Jeffrey, how do you feel about where it landed here on the countdown?
I'm pretty happy with it here. My first instinct is maybe a little bit high, especially when you compare it to other Hanks episodes. But then when you think of it in terms of, okay, episodes from the last 10 seasons, I'm like, well, then I'm like looking at it a lot more favorably. And it's not to say when I compare it completely negatively to the other Hanks episodes. I mean, more that it's just tough competition. I think like there's an argument to be made that this one and the other three that have been on the countdown so far could have all been top 10 episodes, at least according to the most generous interpretations of them. But yeah, I mean, as we dive into the nitty gritty, I guess we'll figure out, where it stands. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely different than the other Hanks episodes you've covered so far, but mostly in a good way, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'll just say that we'll go over mine and Bill's rankings at the end of the show. I think that of the Hanks episodes we've talked about, I still would probably I definitely would put season 14 ahead of this one. And then I probably would put season 16 ahead of this one. There are, some moments besides David S. Pumpkins that I think elevate this episode, but we'll get to those. Steve, your overall thoughts on this one?
I'm largely okay with the placement. I wasn't as high on David Pumpkins as others were. The character. I'll get into how I felt about the sketch once we actually talk about it. I would say there were two sketches in this episode that I think became somewhat of a classic level. There was David Pumpkins, and then there was the character in Black Jeopardy that got brought back in SNL 50. So I think those are on that really high list of sketches. So. Yeah, when I saw this one was at number 8, I wanted to say that like some of the season 16 episode with Tom Hanks might have been a little better, or maybe the season 14 episode. I think generally though this sort of tracks, and like I said, because I think and maybe there is a little bit of recency bias because of people who do remember David as Pumpkins.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I do think that the Black Jeopardy sketch has become as iconic as David S. Pumpkins, but only more recently. I think that is something that people have talked about over the last few years leading up to SNL 50. And then this character being brought back in the 50th anniversary special only adds to the legacy of this episode. So I think it helps. So we'll talk about that sketch as well. I do want to talk first about the David S. Pumpkins sketch, the Haunted Elevator sketch, because I feel like that's the one that makes the most sense to talk about here. So as Casey said, the format pretty similar to like a what's going on here type of sketch that you would expect from a Mikey and Streeter. This one written with Bobby as well. Mikey's a new cast member on the show, so we're starting to see him more on screen. But the idea here is that a couple is going to a haunted elevator ride. The 100 floors of frights as they're going through all of the different floors and seeing these scary, spooky characters appear. And then out of nowhere comes Mikey and Bobby as skeletons alongside David S. Pumpkins, this man of complete mystery with this just iconic suit that he's wearing full of pumpkins. And we start to unravel the mystery just a a little bit. And the idea here is that Beck, who is one of my favorite cast members in the way that he could just do this so well, is like he becomes a great POV for the audience, where we're all just confounded with this character. And he starts talking about how in the weeds he is with David Pumpkins. And it is just so hilarious to watch. And I think it is one of those sketches that appeals to everybody, Bill. Love Haunted Elevator.
Yeah, when I started my daughter on her SNL journey, this was one of the first things we watched because it just made sense as far as this character goes. Yeah, the Beck point is very valid here, John, and it's still something I say when something comes up on the show. Like, I'm so in the weeds with whatever. Beck is the MVP of this, but everybody hits their marks. Leslie's great, Kate's great, Keenan as the elevator operator, the Beat Boy skeletons. Yeah, I mean, it's very quotable. It's very funny. Obviously, you know where this is going after you've seen it one time, but it still hits, and it's still very funny all these 10 years later. So I'm happy to see this just because of this.
Yeah, I think there's something like really beautiful of the writing of this sketch that gets completely overshadowed by the character and like how many people bought the suits and everything like that. I think it's the whole idea that as when you're watching this random character appear, you want to ask questions, but the sketch forces you to, like, they do it for you by saying any questions. And when they're asking questions in the sketch, they're giving answers to those questions. So the like David S. Pumpkins is his own thing, and the skeletons are a part of it. And it almost, Casey, reminds me a little bit of Pat, like the Julia Sweeney character, where there's like, it has those elements to it of like, they're going to ask questions that they're never going to be able to answer. And then it creates almost this excitement for the audience. So it's two very different subject matters, but I do think it has a lot of qualities of those Pat sketches.
Yeah, I see that comparison. And even there is very subtly woke for its time. And it is a lot more clear with David S. Pumpkins than it would be with It's Pat, that the joke is the butt of the joke is the people who become obsessed with finding out this person's whole deal. Not just even if it's whether they're a man or a woman, or where does this guy come from and what does he want from us? So it's like the one with Walken we just talked about earlier. The sketch is making fun of the people who are put in a tizzy by this strange character that they're not used to. And I think that's a very valid, very unique comparison, John.
Thanks, Casey. Jeffrey, what do you think overall about the Haunted Elevator sketch?
This was one of those sketches where you could feel the cultural impact pretty much immediately. I remember that year for Halloween, I dressed as not David Pumpkins, but Kevin Roberts. I believe the Kevin Roberts sketch had aired the previous season, like sometime in the spring. But I was worried that people were going to think I was David Pumpkins, because they definitely had a very similar style. And then you had the David S. Pumpkins animated Halloween special that premiered just a year after this sketch, which I thought was pretty funny. I remember getting mixed reviews, but it became a Halloween time viewing tradition for me for a few years. But yeah, like this, I'd say not since Dick in a Box could you feel the instant iconic nature of an SNL sketch as you did with this one.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to think about the timeline there to see if that tracks, but that's a good thought process. Steve, let me get your thoughts in the meantime.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth about Beck's role in the sketch, because that was what I was thinking about during the rewatch. Is that I felt like I was Beck the whole time. Just basically, he comes out and does the David Pumpkins thing, goes, "Any questions?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have so many. Like, are you a literary character? What's your deal?" Like, so yeah, I was just as in the weeds with David Pumpkins as Beck was, and I enjoyed Keenan's role as sort of a straight man of saying, well, there's 100 floors of frights. They're not all going to be winners. 73 of them are David Pumpkins, and the beatbox skeletons. there was a sort. I don't know why, but there's a sort of like late '80s aesthetic with the beatbox music. It added to the weirdness of the David Pumpkins sketch. But yes, Beck's character is what I think I identified with the most.
Yeah, and again, just to contextualize this episode, in terms of SNL, what is happening here is that, post SNL 40, the show is in like a weird place where it's still trying to define itself and figure out its cast. We had the whole weird thing with season 39 with the new cast members, and some of them stay on, some of them don't. The women are clearly leading the charge, and there's some good things happening. But it isn't really, to me, until partway through season 41 that they just figure it out, and it ends up being a pretty good season. We've seen a few episodes of that on the countdown, all leading up to this fall of 2016 election where they're going to bring in Alec Baldwin as Trump alongside Kate as Hillary. And the show is hitting on all cylinders. It has just found a way back into the zeitgeist in a way that it hasn't been for many years, probably, since, towards that 2008 to 2010 run. And I remember, all of my friends who now I'm like 6 years out of high school or 7 years out of high school, and all of my friends who stopped watching the show tuned back in the fall to see what SNL was going to do with the 2016 election. So I think that this episode also has the confluence of like people just coming back and watching it and getting very lucky with some of the good sketches and making them even greater because of how much people were talking about the show all at the time. So people were really excited to see what was going to happen in these debate sketches. And we're going to open up the show here with the third presidential debate. We see Tom Hanks here as moderating the debate, which is really fun in terms of SNL, a parlance with, him being at a debate sketch on SNL. Very fun stuff. And then, of course, we're going to get into the point where, everyone's pretty confident that Hillary's going to win in SNL land. And, the whole, tonight I feast. There's a lot of things that people do remember about this sketch, including, Hillary getting bingo with the things that Trump is saying, the entire planet laughing at him, and the you're probably going to lose. So it's really a lot of Hillary dunking on Trump here, which doesn't age the best, but it is definitely fascinating to go and watch. And I remember just being excited to see it at the time. Bill, how does it feel to revisit the third presidential debate?
Only for you and the podcast, John, would I rewatch this, and I did. And my takeaway is that, oh, what a different world from what we're going to get in a couple episodes after this. But I mean, the connection to the '88 debate. Obviously, Tom plays Peter Jennings in that one, and here he's playing Chris Wallace. Is fun. '88, as we've talked about, one of the best debate sketches of all time. And you have to think in the back of your mind, not only what the general public is thinking. You think Alec is thinking like, this is the last time I'm going to have to do this, because it's famously been reported that he thought he was going to be done, because everybody thought Hillary was going to win. So yeah, this is the fifth time he does this. It ends up being the fifth of 53 times. I mean, what can you say about that? That's just insanity. And of course, that took on a life of its own besides the presidency itself. So it's very interesting as a time capsule, but it does not age very well.
Yeah, I think the fifth, because he did play him twice in the previous episode. This is the fourth episode of the season. And then I think he had always planned to be around for the first five, because the one that we're going to get in the Benedict Cumberbatch episode, that's the one where they're going to be like roaming through the streets, and we're going to get this moment of like the two of them together. And that's the one that everyone was like ready to say goodbye. And at the time, I mean, I just want you guys to remember, like Alec Baldwin, the guy who's hosted the show the most, the one that most people feel is like the greatest host of all time, potentially at this moment. And he is like very ready to even put like the cherry on top to his SNL iconic career. And then he's going to end up obviously having to play or continuing to play Trump through the entire administration, to the point where people start dunking on him for doing this, including the president. So it ends up taking a wild turn that I don't think anyone at the time anticipated, just in terms of, SNL land. But it is a really fascinating perspective now in 2025 to go back to 2016, when everyone was super excited about Alec Baldwin playing Trump, Casey. So how do you feel about this cold open revisiting it?
Well, it is definitely something else I have to contextualize, and the context I'm going to add that no one else brought up is that the appeal of Alec Baldwin as Trump was that his impression was, well, not better than Daryl Hammond's, but just something that it captured something that Daryl Hammond's couldn't at the time, because Daryl Hammond did the Stuck in the Apprentice low energy voice, and it was people didn't think that could carry a whole debate sketch, so they brought in Alec Baldwin, who physically resembled Trump a bit more and was able to capture the real manic energy of 2016 era Trump, when we all knew he was snorting crushed up Adderall before those debates. So it captured something that the real Trump didn't. But obviously, as time went on, Alec Baldwin will be just as burnt out and beaten down by having to do this impression as the real Trump was by having to be president. And also at this time, a lot of the jokes felt like low-hanging fruit too, not just because this was such a ridiculously stupid election, but they were also living in the era of, there's a deluge of late night shows on networks and cable channels, all doing live debate coverage and people live tweeting the debates. So there was like 1,000 different takes and 1,000 different jokes on the same events in the news that people got out there before SNL did. So it felt like they were beaten to the punch and were only doing the best they could do, even if this was, really an election where if Donald Trump can say words like bad hombres, nasty women, and mention black tar heroin during a presidential debate, the jokes write themselves, and we're already living in an SNL parody sketch. But and also with big movie stars like Hanks and Baldwin, they had to appeal to a wider audience and make it more palatable for the thing that most people tuned in to see, particularly older viewers who just like to watch the first part of the show up to Weekend Update and go to sleep, and or if they can figure out streaming, watch it Sunday morning. So that wide appeal and that low hanging fruit nature of this whole election watered down these types of sketches a bit, and some of it felt a little outlandish, like when Baldwin's Trump says no one has more respect for women than me, and then it cuts to a montage ending with Hank saying, all right, settle down, entire planet, we have to move on. It's just it became a thing of what are we doing here and what is there left to say. But you can see why Kate McKinnon was being groomed as a bright star of the future, because she does really hold her own next to SNL's heavy hitter 5-timers club host, and especially during the rant about her the past 30 years of her career. And you just have to put yourself in the mindset of this was before the time when pretty much every news channel became Trump TV on November 9th, and we really did hate it, but none of us thought that was going to happen.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about because, obviously, like you said, Daryl was playing Trump after they tried to give it to like Taron Killam, and then they couldn't figure it out. And then, Lauren's going to ask his friend Alec to come in and do this. And what I think is interesting is, like you said, he plays him like super harsh, super mean, almost cartoony. He's like a cartoon villain, the way that he plays Trump. And you could almost say like that is Trump himself at times. But I do think on SNL, like that was what they were going for here. But I almost felt like he was set up just on SNL to be the punching bag to Kate McKinnon as Hillary, who was a generational prospect at the show and landed the perfect role as the impressionist of someone who was, set up to become president. And I think that it is just like such a fascinating arc to watch from an SNL perspective of like Kate has like the red carpet has been rolled out for Kate, who is just there to continuously dunk on Alec, who is totally fine to be that punching bag. And you get to see that many times throughout this sketch. So that's really what you're looking at here to start the show. We then get Tom Hanks's monologue, who was hosting for the 9th time here, returning for the first time since 2006 to host the show. So, SNL is going so well. Lauren's calling in some favors. Tom, one of the greatest hosts of all time. You got to come back and host. And he's there because he's America's dad, and he needs to tell the world that they are going to be fine despite everything that's happening during this 2016 election. Jeffrey, how did it feel for you to see Tom Hanks return to the show in his monologue here?
I'm just going to trust my own memory. But I feel like when I watched this sketch and he said, "I'm America's dad, I'm going to comfort you," I feel like he lived up to that promise. I did feel comforted by this monologue, and it was a stressful time. I was surprised about, I guess, like everyone else here, I was surprised by the results of the election a couple weeks later. But even if it had gone the way we were expecting to, it was still a very stressful time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad people like Tom Hanks exist and still stop by Studio 8H once in a while and let us know things are okay. And I don't think I laughed out loud during this monologue. I just chuckled a bit, but I'm like, this is still a great monologue because it just made me feel nicer inside.
It was comforting, Steve, to see Tom Hanks back at the show at the time.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, and you always know when he comes back, you're in good hands comedically. And then, of course, he does portray America's dad. And I'll admit I was in a little more of a euphoric mood that night, because that was also the night that the Cubs won the National League pennant. So I was a little more wrapped up in that than necessarily the Hanks monologue. But yeah, it always great to see Tom Hanks back, and this was a great tone setter for the episode.
I will second that, because that was also the night that I booked my flight to Chicago to watch the Cubs eventually win the World Series. So it was a very exciting time for me. But of course, you'll see a lot of that in the Cumberbatch episode we watch, where the Cubs will be appearing, one of the great moments of the fall of 2016. But yeah, good stuff here from Tom Hanks, who's there as host. Then we're going to get that Black Jeopardy sketch that we talked about. So Black Jeopardy, that's a pretty famous Michael Che sketch that he's written for the show with Brian Tucker and Keenan. And he will write one here where we're going to have Leslie Jones and Sashir Zameda play two of the contestants alongside Tom Hanks, who's playing Doug, a guy who's MAGA and he's wearing a MAGA hat. And we get all of these questions for Black Jeopardy that conventionally you would think he would be on the other side of everything that is being spoken about. But actually what they find here is that there's a lot of commonality in how this character, Doug, and people like him think with Black culture. And I think that that coming together was great, in not only in the writing, but in the way that Keenan and Tom Hanks and then Leslie and Sashir react to the answers to some of these questions. And it is just one that you're watching in real time, and that has some twists and turns. It is really, really funny, Bill, to go back and watch this Black Jeopardy sketch.
Yeah, Keenan really bringing the heat here. Bill gets a lot of credit for his game show host, obviously Hartman, but Keenan underrated as a game show host, and really this is his shining moment doing Black Jeopardy here. I love the concept of we're more similar than we're different as a country. That seems quaint in 2025 as opposed to 2016 even. But this really hits on a lot of levels when they start talking about how the new phone wants your thumbprint, or that the election's already been elected. They already know who they're going to elect, and the reactions, the swelling of emotion as they all realize like this guy who probably would have a gun on his porch if he saw us walking down the street is actually a lot more like us. One of my favorite moments is Keenan going over to shake his hand and Tom backing up and putting his arms up. But yeah, ending with lives that matter. And then, okay, well, that's as far as we can go. So I love that moment. They did this 7 times, but this is the best for sure.
Yeah, and there's just something that's like, it's very rare, I think, in modern SNL times where you watch a sketch, it is really funny, it is acted out really well, but it also makes you think. And I think that checks a lot of boxes, Jeffrey, in this sketch in Black Jeopardy. Would love to know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I mean, Bill, you sounded kind of skeptical about, the message of we're more alike than we are different. And I mean, that's not a sufficient way to go about existing with other people in this country that you disagree with, but there is something to it. And I'm like, yeah, there is similarities between the working class black people presented, who are the typical contestants on Black Jeopardy, and a MAGA guy like Doug. And yeah, this sketch does make me hopeful. It made me hopeful then. It still makes me hopeful rewatching it now that, maybe there is some way to repair our country. It won't be easy. It won't be as simple as everyone just watching this silly SNL sketch. But yeah, I mean, at least for like 5 minutes, I'm like, there's something to it. And I mean, I don't know, maybe someone will, I don't know. The more cynical view is to disagree with that, but I'll say more confidently, I'm impressed by how this was a recurring sketch where they managed to reinvent it successfully with each edition. The structure was the same, but that third contestant always added a new wrinkle. And yeah, I do believe this was the best one, but they were all terrific in their own ways.
Yeah, because I love that the cover of this sketch is just like, hey, this is stereotypically how people are, depending on what culture you're talking about. And in this case, it's Black Jeopardy. But then the layer of it is that we're going to then bring somebody else into this world, and we're going to put them in their own box, so that when you start the sketch, you have preconceived notions about how they are going to answer these questions, only for it to be discovered through the answers to the questions that there is more to these people, whether it is like the Black contestants on the show or the MAGA contestant on the show, than what is previously perceived as. So, Steve, I think there's just a lot of wonderful things in this sketch.
Yeah, there really are, and I mean, it's I wonder what my perception of it is now based on what it was back in 2016, and yeah, there's really a lot to it. I don't know if I have much more to add than what's already been added to this sketch, but it's a really wonderful sketch.
No problem. This sketch, which is to me an all-time great sketch that deserves to be on the level of discussion as the Haunted Elevator sketch, similar to the way we were talking about the Census one with more Cowbell last time, is then followed by a sketch, a very classic James Anderson and Ken Sublette sketch called Halloween Show. Here, we have to just get one in here, Casey, where we're going to see Cecily Strong and Tom Hanks as Jill and Todd, who are performing for the rest of the group their Halloween show. Casey, what do you think of this one?
Well, I think the placing's a bit odd because it comes after Black Jeopardy, where they reinvent the formula of the white person being the ostracized odd one out. They inverted that because I noticed that had been written by Che, because I'm familiar enough with Che's early stand-up to notice that one of his go-to comedy tricks is creating similarities between disparate groups of people, especially Black people and white Republicans, to what is another cookie cutter sketch, because, and it's the start of these, because it's one of the first of these where we see a James Anderson Ken Sublette sketch with Cecily and a male host just saying, hey, let's do this song, but no one knows it. And as they sing it, they're gradually more and more confused and irritated and alienated until they get to a point where, oh, we do know this song. Let's all belt it out. And then they disappear. But this is a song that everyone knows because it's essentially a Dracula Halloween version of Don't Stop Believing by Journey. And people don't come around on it. They're just, well, they do, but for most of it, they're just very put off by its strangeness. I'll say Melissa Villasenor was one of her early moments to shine from someone who was very underrated during her tenure. But yeah, it grew on me a little, but there's I've seen this type of sketch so many times before that I don't really have much else to say on it. So um,
Yeah, it's not my type of sketch. I'll say that. But I know that it's, for the musical theater group, maybe they do enjoy something like this more, but it's just not necessarily for me. This will be followed by a pre-tape called Broken, which is a CBS show that's parodying This Is Us and saying how now every sitcom has to have some sort of dramatic component to it. Steve, any memories of Broken?
You mean from like 2016, or you mean just from like
From both, either
yeah.
watching this the second time, or what would you like to say about this one?
I mean, I think the whole game was just a matter of like they're trying to just wedge themselves into the comedy category, and yeah, I mean, you were starting to get to that point where, you know, streaming networks were starting to win all the Emmy awards, so they just wanted to desperately win one. So they created a drama and put it in the comedy category, but it's like this could have just stood up on its own. So I did love the caption that said, like, I think like so and so critic, I forget what it was said, "This is a drama." It's like it's because it was basically just unfunny.
Yeah, look, this is okay. I think we sort of have what I would lovingly refer to as a shit sandwich here, where we have two great pieces of bread, classic cruise bread on the outside with Black Jeopardy and Haunted Elevator, that in the middle you get the Halloween show and Broken, which again probably removes the episode for me from the pantheon. Like I think, unfortunately, I think you're talking here about taking an episode down from what is probably a top 10 episode of all time to like a top 25 episode of all time when you get stuff like this. The rest of the episode, though, I think has some things that we could talk about here. So Lady Gaga is going to perform music. She's going to perform AO. And then later on, Million Reasons. Very beautiful stuff. I think Mark Ronson is backing her on that first song. And then on a Weekend Update, we have an appearance by Leslie Jones, who talks about being hacked recently. This is like around the time of like the fappening, I think it was called, where people were like horribly breaking into celebrities' phones and stuff and posting their nudes online. And this happened to Leslie. So she goes on to address this. And then we're going to see Cecily as the girl you wish you hadn't started a conversation with at a party. She will be there as well. So we're going to get Cecily and Leslie on the show here. We will also get one of the worst Weekend Update cuts in modern SNL history, where we were supposed to get Bruce Chandling with Tom Hanks's like Jerry Seinfeld stand-up character returning, and that one ended up online. And I was like, how in the world did they cut this? It was so crazy. But let's talk about what we saw here on the show with Leslie and Cecily. Casey, anything you want to point out from Weekend Update?
I'll say it was really great to see Leslie Jones own her own scandal, her own hacking scandal. I mean, I don't know how well the leaking her nudes part of it would age, but it is great to see her own her own embarrassment in a time when she herself was being bought down by internet trolls because of Ghostbusters and just anything else. So it's just great to see her own it in the face of oppression. And I just love the general message of don't let the bastards win. Don't let them get you down no matter what they do. Just stand up and own it. And I think this girl you wish you hadn't started a conversation with at a party is probably the one that best showcases the chemistry between Cecily and Che out of any Weekend Update bit with them I've seen.
Yeah, Bill, anything from Update you want to talk about?
Yeah, just two of the classics here. Leslie in her element. This was where she was most suited as far as SNL goes. Yeah, owning that. The connection with her and Jost here is always very fun. My favorite line in the Cecily part is that she's going as Justice and David Justice. Wow, is every athlete, black black people are just athletes. So yeah, I love a good old baseball reference on a Weekend Update. So yeah.
I love the sketch we get right after Update. This is a sketch called Cockpit, which is a two-hander between Alec Baldwin and Tom Hanks. And this, we get one of those rare things that we don't get very often now, where Tom Hanks is actually promoting the film that he's there to promote, where he is in real life in September of 2016. The movie Sully came out, where he's portraying Sully, who, of course, was the captain for the Miracle on the Hudson. And we get this really fun sketch here of Sully entering the cockpit, who thinks he's going to be the captain on the flight, but the air traffic control doesn't want him to be the captain, so they move him to the second chair, and we get another captain come in. And then the awkwardness between, like, he's like, well, I'm the hero. Do you know who I am? I'm Sully. I know Ellen. There's a lot of really good lines here back and forth between two of the great hosts to ever do it on SNL. Steve, your thoughts on the cockpit sketch?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Hanks playing sort of a jealous Sully, which was, something you would not expect, considering that all the news coverage about Sully ever since the Miracle on the Hudson was sort of this benevolent sort of, airline pilot. So yeah, no, I mean, you get Baldwin, you get Hanks, both playing in that role, and yeah. Especially at the end, it's like we're going down to the Hudson. We're going down. No, we're not. Yeah, it was probably, yeah, definitely very fun sketch. Really enjoyed it.
Brace for impact. Just kidding. It's really great stuff. Jeffrey, how did you like the cockpit sketch?
Well, I was a little wary revisiting this sketch just a few months after seeing Nathan Fielder do his own version of the Sully story on the rehearsal, which, was just as a singular a vision as you could possibly get in the world of comedy. This is definitely not that, but it is enjoyable enough on its own. It's a nice little simple sketch with some silly energy to keep the show moving right along in the middle. And yeah, I mean, it's not a classic, but it is one where it's like, the energy is high and you're getting strong laughs, even though it's not the most ingenious idea ever. So you can tell that, like, that's another mark of a great episode, where, like, even these simple sketches are getting such a nice reception.
Yeah, to me, this sketch is written in the world of the Bobby Moynihan Keith character, that little kid who was like, went to go behind into the locker room to see the hockey players, or on the set of Little Fockers, where he's just like obsessed with something. When they had that whole moment where the kid's really excited to go meet the captain, who's a veteran, versus actually going to see Sully. Like, that whole the whole idea that the hero doesn't get the recognition, I think, is a great trope to play on. So I really do like this, and it's very fun to get the two hosts here. Then it is followed by a pre-tape, which I think is the more memorable pre-tape from this episode, called A Girl's Halloween. They do this thing a lot in this era, where they're going to go, have something happen, and then they'll jump forward in time, and they'll jump back in time and forward in time. And you get that here with Vanessa Bayer and Adie Bryant and Cecily Strong, who are preparing for a girls' night out, where they're going to go party on Halloween, and they're wearing their different mouse and cheese costumes. And then you go out and you see the disaster from their night, and flash back to how they were getting ready and what had happened before. And I do remember, I mean, at this time I was still going out every year and going to party on Halloween, and just watching this, even though it was from a guy's perspective, to see it from the girl's perspective, I loved every single moment of this pre-tape, Bell. I think it's one of the great ones.
It is, and it's very relatable as anybody who's ever gone out. It doesn't even have to be Halloween. Any like, oh, I'm not going to drink tonight, or Vanessa being the cheese and being very excited about it, and then by the end of the night she's bawling, and why did you make me be the cheese? Doing each other's makeup and everything like that, and even Bobby, who's woefully missing, other than the David S. Pumpkins, cleaning the window in the pizzeria right before he's got to kick these drunk girls out. We're seeing the height of female power on SNL, and this is one of those great examples for sure.
And it translates so well to this pre-tape, Casey.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of the first of these just quick cut back and forth pre-tapes that started with the season. They would do a couple more each season, up until Kate and 80's final season, I think. So this was a unique thing to see at the time, that the show would come back to quite a bit. So it's nice to see them still experimenting with pre-tapes in the post Lonely Island era.
And it's a great night for Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider, who write the cold open and then also the 2 pre-tapes in this episode. Lady Gaga is going to perform her second song here, and then we're going to end with America's Funniest Pets. And I think the more memorable version is maybe the Adam Driver one. This is the second edition of the 2, but here we're going to get Tom Hanks as Ron Howard, inviting Kate McKinnon and Cecily Strong as Noelle and Joelle to, basically talk over funny pet videos, and they just can't seem to get it right, Steve. So your thoughts on America's Funniest Pets?
This just felt like a reason or just an excuse for Tom Hanks to break out the Ron Howard impersonation that he probably wanted to do for many, many years and finally got the chance to do so. I would agree. I would agree with that assessment on the Adam Driver episode, but still, and again, another excuse to just narrate weirdly over pet videos. So, like I said, my thoughts is just I think he wanted to do the Ron Howard imitation. He got the chance to do so.
Jeffrey, anything you got on America's Funniest Pets?
I feel like this sort of thing is just right up my alley. Kind of a highbrow, lowbrow mix. Very silly, the highbrow of the French haughty stereotype, and just playing against silly animal videos. And I'd say Kate and Cecily's performance here, I feel like it was just as strong as it was in the original edition. And then, to have Hanks playing Ron Howard is why the hell not? Like that could have been, like maybe he wanted to play, was the first time they worked together Apollo 13. Did they ever do any other movies together? But yeah, maybe for like 20 years, he just wanted to do an impression of one of his directors. And it was like, sure, why not? It's the last sketch of the night. We can do whatever we want.
I think they did the Da Vinci Code together, but
okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, and Ken and Jess's Splash as well. Yeah, so they had like a great relationship, and it was made for parody, I guess. So that is the rundown for the Tom Hanks and Lady Gaga episode. A really interesting night, one that everyone was really excited about. Tom Hanks coming back, having another great episode under his belt. So Bill Kenny, it lands here at 8. How are you feeling about it overall?
Yeah, talking through this, I feel like this is more memorable than greatest as far as placement. So, probably top 25 because of the really, really great stuff of Black Jeopardy and David S. Pumpkins, even A Girl's Halloween. But there's some pretty low lows here with the classic, did you say, John, Halloween show? And
yes.
and Broken. Yes, I know. So, yeah, I mean, you get a good update here. You get, the icons in cockpit. But, I think this is just a smidge high for me, especially compared to the other Hanks episodes that we've already talked about.
Jeffrey, how about you? How would you rate this episode in our countdown after looking back at it now?
Well, I feel like I'm both agreeing and disagreeing with what Bill just said, because I do think it's a bit high. I feel like top 20 is about right. Compared to other Hanks episodes, I'm kind of a little different than you, John. I think I like the season 15 was the Five Timers episode. Or was that season 16? Okay. Then maybe where did you put that in your Hanks rankings?
So out of the ones that we talked about here on the countdown, I have Tom Hanks' season 14 with Keith Richards, that premiere, as by far the best one that we've seen. Then I would go down to the season 16 one. That's the Five Timers one.
Okay.
Then I would place this one. And then the Tom Hanks Aerosmith one would be 15.
Right. Okay, yeah. So the Five Timers is my favorite of his. Then I think this is about on par with the season 14 episode. But yeah, so I said I agree with Bill. This is a smidge high, but I do like the Halloween show sketch, and I think Broken is pretty hilarious as well. And I think that's more of a parody of Transparent than it is of This Is Ups, which is like a comedy or a drama masquerading as a comedy. But yeah, for me, the only real misstep here is the presidential debate, which I give a pass to because like that was, it's like a mandatory that they lead off with political sketches in modern SNL in a fairly literal style, and it's not a terrible version, but yes, from monologue forward, I think there's nothing terrible. 2 classic sketches, everything else is good to great.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe I didn't give Broken enough credit there, so that certainly would boost this episode a little bit if you did enjoy that one. Steve, how do you feel about this episode coming in at 8?
I think after talking about it, I think it probably is a little bit too high. I probably would put it more in the 10 to 15 range. I was a little higher on Halloween Show than I think you guys might have been. Broken was okay. And then like I said, two sketches that were classics in David S. Pumpkins and Black Jeopardy, and then most of the rest. I feel like the presidential monologue, it's tough to really. I have to kind of go back and view it in that moment because I just feel like the overwhelming feeling when I watch that sketch is how dated it is, given everything that has happened ever since election night. So, like I said, 10 to 15 feels about right. 8 maybe a little high, and maybe not the best Hanks episode of the bunch.
That is fair. All right, Casey, let's get your final thoughts on this episode. Casey, you're muted, so just unmute yourself and we'll get you back in. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, technical difficulties there. Just a sudden interruption. I'd say this one does truly deserve its status as an all-time classic. Like most Hanks episodes, he was very strong and something he elevated a lot of, and it did more than just coast on good vibes. Or coast on a host. It was pretty much a top to bottom solid episode that's has more hidden gems than just the 2 big things it's remembered for. So I would still say that it deserves its spot on this episode or on this list.
Yeah, I think this has all the makings of a great episode of Saturday Night Live, if not all-time great. I think this is probably top 25. Yes, I did not enjoy the Halloween Show, and I thought Broken was just okay. I think I would probably have felt better about the episode had those 2 been towards the end of the night. However, the good things in this episode are unbelievably great. At the time, just again, everyone is so infatuated with what they're doing at the election. Getting Tom Hanks back at the show at this time was so fantastic. And you're going to have 1, if not 2 sketches that are going to stand the test of time. So for me, this definitely has to be here on this countdown, in the upper half of this countdown, no doubt. It's probably like a little bit high and probably riding on the coattails of David S. Pumpkins a little bit more than, let's say, the previous episode with more Cowbell. But great talk here on Tom Hanks and Lady Gaga's episode from October 22nd, 2016. So, look, we talked about how crazy of a time this was in SNL history with Tom Hanks coming back in, and now we're getting close to the election. Well, we are going to do something pretty incredible on this countdown, because this is the way that the votes landed here, that we are going to jump forward just a little bit, where we are going to go for number 7 on this countdown a couple episodes later to Dave Chappelle and A Tribe Called Quest, where at number 7, season 42, episode 6 is up next, where the results of the election have been revealed for a few days, and Dave Chappelle is here to cover it all. And this is one of the most iconic episodes in the history of the show, and it lands here at number 7. What a fascinating event we have here tonight, Bill Kenny, covering these episodes back to back. Your thoughts?
The whiplash of 3 weeks, John. We've covered hot take shows that were closer to farther apart than this. Like, this is wow. Listen, this is a very, very interesting episode, and the passage of time may have changed some people's perspectives on Dave. This was a really, really big deal. Besides the election stuff, besides everything, most comedy people, such as all of us, know he had disappeared for like a decade. His show on Comedy Central was bigger than SNL in 03 to 05 when SNL was going through a pretty big dip. So this was a merging of worlds here, having Dave appear on the show for the first time and kind of make his comeback into the comedy realm. So yeah, very, very interesting to go from the Hanks of it all, an all-time classic SNL host, all the way back to the 80s, to Dave Chappelle just a couple weeks later.
Yeah, I cannot understate, though, how excited everybody was for Dave Chappelle to finally host the show. I've talked about it before. I remember in 2013, the night of a few nights around that Jimmy Fallon, Justin Timberlake episode that we talked about, I was in New York. I went to the Comedy Cellar. Dave Chappelle walked in as a surprise. He had been out of the game, and he just started lighting up a cigarette, sitting on the piano, and just talking about how he wanted to get back into comedy. And like him coming in here, he was like every person on the cast's idol. It was a crazy time. No one knew how he was going to address what was happening, how the show was going to handle it. Like everyone was pretty sure what was going to happen, and they were in for a big surprise. And SNL like made their mark and made their stance very clear, and it didn't go their way. And Dave was there to sort of like talk to the nation. And it is just fascinating to get a guy who was willing to say basically anything there to handle the moment. And the night is full of incredible surprises, incredible things that you didn't think you were going to get to see. And I just think it is by far one of the most important episodes that's ever aired in this 50-year show. Casey, your thoughts on it?
Well, this is one you really, really, really have to contextualize the time it's from. Not just because the election where people were just in a massive state of shock, wondering what was going to happen next. People thought, lives were at stake soon. People's livelihoods were at risk. But also, Dave Chappelle, this was the first time Dave Chappelle hosts, and he was making a comeback after having a successful sketch show and stand-up career, and people genuinely liked him then and came around on him. So, people were, excited to see this guy that they remembered fondly, because this was before any of his like $50-60 million a piece Netflix specials came out, so he wasn't catching a ton of flack for punching down on any marginalized groups, or he wasn't seen as this offensive, divisive figure just yet. So just in this moment of shock, it's only in that time would it make sense that most of America would turn to some new Dave Chappelle comedy for comfort, because there was a time he was seen as someone who can make intelligent salient points on the state of race in America, but unfortunately he would veer off in another direction in his comedy career, in which we would see more of later. But people were just really looking to SNL for just some comfort, some escape, some sanity at this time. Right. And this was the only time where that could happen. It's like our friends that week in SNL on their Patreon recently said, sometimes you have to find joy just out of spite when you're living under a government that seemingly wants you, broken down, exhausted, so you'll be compliant. And this was that in that moment, and specifically that moment in time.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting perspective, I would say. I think just that, the election results have been revealed for a few days. I think that like people are trying to come around to like, okay, well, what does this mean? How did this happen? Like, what's gonna look like? No one had any idea what the Trump administration would be about. And I think Dave is coming from a place of like, we're all gonna be okay. which it just ages differently to different people depending on what perspective you come from. But I think just like on this night on November 12th, he was very comforting for a lot of people to get to see him that night. Jeffrey, your thoughts on this episode landing here at number 7?
So I think this is definitely a worthwhile episode to be talking about, regardless of how funny you think about it is. You know, obviously coming in, being the first episode after a shocking election, Dave's return, and it breaks format and stretches the show's format in a lot of ways. The cold opening is very different than usual, much shorter than usual. The monologue's much longer than usual. There's moments of breaking the fourth wall a bit. And Tribe Called Quest, they were making a huge comeback. Like, it had been decades, I think, since they'd released any new music, and this was their, Fife Dog, I think, had died recently, so it was, that was a big deal as well. So it's just it's like so much going on here, so much interesting that is so atypical of most SNL episodes from this era, or really any other era. So yeah, it's just it's kind of like an inflection point, not just in SNL history, but American history. I don't know if I can get a little what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is,
catharsis, maybe.
No, like being a little like ambitious with my take on it, maybe a little overly ambitious, but I don't know, that's what it feels like. Just as for as a quick preview of my overall thoughts.
I think that makes sense. Steve, how do you feel about this episode overall?
First off, what a tonal shift from episode number 8, which was 2 weeks before the election, to now 4 days after the election. I honestly, I say this about certain episodes of SNL. I feel like there are certain SNL episodes that just feel like an event. And I had, for some reason, I had completely forgotten about the Dave Chappelle, basically going in exile, living in Africa for a long time, and then kind of coming back. And this is like a major comeback for Dave Chappelle. And some of the stuff hasn't aged as well. Some of it has, this night felt like an event because it was the first episode after the election, because it was Chappelle. So it makes sense that it's on the list. And I agree with you, John, that I think it's one of the most important episodes. Is it one of the funniest?
Yeah, so I just want to be I want to be careful about a couple of things here, because I just want to make my stance clear. Again, if you don't listen to what I'm saying, that's totally your right. But I want to just make the distinction here that, do I think this is one of the best episodes in the history of the show? I do not. Do I think it is one of the greatest? Absolutely. I think that this is one of the greatest. And the major difference here is, like, I'm not saying that every sketch is a 10 out of 10. There's a lot of really good sketches here on this show. But I think greatness comes in a form when you are talking about an event. And it wasn't just an event before the episode, Steve. It's an event after this episode. It's one that people were talking about for years. And to this day, I think it is one of those that's like, if you want to tell the story of the show, this is a very large tentpole episode to go back to and talk about. And that's why I feel it is so iconic and needs to be at the top of the list. This is the one tonight that I actually feel is the most deserving of its spot on this list, to be honest with you, because of those moments. And then I also want to make another distinction here as we transition over to the cold open, which is that I think we could do 3 hours on talking about the Hallelujah cold open. So we'll sort of keep it brief. But I will say, we get this cold open here. Kate McKinnon comes out. Leonard Cohen had passed that week, so she's going to sing Hallelujah. So it is a tribute to Leonard Cohen, and I don't want to take that away from this cold open. But they basically use it as a way to be the voice that you're going to see representing the show to the rest of America, where we see Kate as Hillary, and there's sort of this facade that's broken down where she says, "I'm not giving up, and neither should you." And I will say this has nothing to do with how I feel about politics, nothing at all. But I hated this cold open watching it at the time. I really didn't like it. I felt like it was totally like antithetical to everything I knew and loved about the show. I felt like this, is one thing for, to get to know a cast member on the show and how they feel. It's another to say like, hey, this is how I should feel, and this is how you should feel, and this is like how everyone should feel. And I felt like I was like, what is happening here? Like, I didn't feel like they met the moment and handle it. I will say that's my subjective viewpoint just on this personally for the cold open. Objectively, though, I think the moment has become extremely iconic. I think it's one of those things that, like, in the history books, when the show eventually ends 10, 20, 50 years down the road, I think Kate McKinnon at the piano is going to be one of those moments that's going to be on the cover of the series of Saturday Night Live. And you can't take that away from this moment. And I respect it because of that. So I have never had a segment in the history of Saturday Night Live, Bill, that I feel more conflicted on.
Yeah, I've never felt conflicted on this because I feel like contextualizing it in the moment, it was exactly what people needed. It can be thought of as maudlin, it could be thought of as over the top or divisive, but I think at that moment, the majority of people who are watching SNL coming to the show have not laughed, have not maybe stopped crying in 4 or 5 days. For the people who watch the show, obviously, there's others, but so this was almost a catharsis release to a lot of people as far as coming to the show. I've always enjoyed what they did here, because what else were you going to do? Were you going to make a sketch with Trump and Hillary? Were you going to just, there was no real good way to get into the show with the feeling in the majority of the country at that particular moment. So I think this works here. And I agree with you, John, that this works even more so in hindsight.
Yeah, there's definitely elements of what you're saying that I agree with. Steve, I want to get your perspective on this Hallelujah Cold Open.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Bill said. It does feel a little cringy in retrospect, but I feel like in the moment, I remember how I felt. I remember how my friends felt after the election. And granted, many of my friends were on the Hillary end of the spectrum. Yeah, I mean, there were some friends of mine who felt like what happened on that election night was worse than 9/11 because it was what we did, because we did this to ourselves as a nation. And I don't want to get too politically into the weeds here, but there was a sadness and an unbearableness to the point where I had to get away from social media that day before the election happened. So I don't know if I could have started with something. I don't know if I could have started with like a funny sketch. I feel like in the moment it met the moment. I don't know if I love it now, but in the moment, I feel like it met the moment.
Yeah, I totally get that. I just felt like the show just like lost itself in the moment. Like there was almost like an identity crisis that the show was having of like, I remember like reading articles where Lauren said in that week, I just wanted, Kate, who was front facing for the previous few weeks, to have her moment to say what she needed to say to the nation. And it also felt like really naturally fitting with what happened to Leonard Cohen. And like, I get all of that, but like, I don't know. I just thought, like, at what point did the show change where the cast members dictated the identity of the show? Like, at some point, like, it's like that never happened before in a way. And it did here. And I know that this was like an extreme moment for a lot of people, but the show had already been around for 42 years. And there was a lot of crazy moments throughout then where the show didn't go in this direction. So I just think as an SNL fan, it left me extremely conflicted. Jeffrey, I would love to know your thoughts.
I feel a lot similarly to you, John. I don't think I viscerally hated it. I kind of just like ignored it. I'm like, I'm not going to treat this as a sketch. It's just, this is what they're feeling in the moment, and they couldn't, how the cast members were feeling, and maybe how most of the crew members were feeling, and they just couldn't avoid saying it. But I'm like, I was disappointed by the results of the election. I certainly needed some friendly voices to turn to, but this isn't what I turned to SNL for. this is very different than the way they did things in the past for divisive moments like this. And I mean, maybe there weren't moments that were as quite as divisive as this was, at least in terms of politics previously in the show's history. And but yeah, I really wanted SNL to be like confirming my political stances. I mean, on the other hand, I don't want them to be like wishy-washy, both sides style when it comes to politics, but I don't really want them to be earnest, in at least not in this particular way. Maybe in other situations, earnestness can be fine, but yeah, it's like, if that's what you needed to do, fine. But I'll look at the rest of the episode more critically from a comedic critical lens.
I agree. And I also think if you go to the Bill Burr cold open from this past season, season 50, where Trump is elected for the second time, and you go see how SNL addressed that with having their cast members come out and just basically like give their support for Trump in a sarcastic way and say like, oh yeah, like I didn't do this, don't put me on your list, like all of those things. I think I was just like, whoa, like this was just so refreshing in a way that I felt like they had a take on that was kind of fun and different. And we were just like supporting that. And it is just so different in retrospect to what we saw that was happening at the show at the time. And I do think, like I said, I think that image of Kate at the piano is one that's going to be ingrained in SNL history. But I think if they could go back and do it all over again, they would change things a little bit.
Yes. Speaking of Kate, the image of her as Hillary at the piano is a strange one, because I was reading our friend Stooge's review on his One SNL Day blog, and he said people were saying at the time, I would have liked and respected the Hallelujah cold open more if Kate had done it as herself and not as Hillary, because it would have been more emotionally sincere than it was. And that made me think, there have been, this is like the third out of several times in SNL history where we got a somber, serious funeral dirge cold open in response to a tragedy that had just happened in the weeks leading up to that show. There was 9/11 with Paul Simon and Rudy Giuliani. That's how messed up of a time. That's how messed up of time periods in history 9/11/01 and 11/9/16 were. We were looking to Rudy Giuliani and Dave Chappelle for comfort and consolation and guidance. So, but that was just Lauren, Paul Simon, and Giuliani as themselves. The children's choir from Sandy Hook as themselves, Cecily as herself in the wake of the parachuting a year before that, and again later with the war in Ukraine starting, and also Jason Aldean as himself. So it's the only one of these where someone did a character or an impression. But we've talked about meeting the moment and leading up to the moment. These were all times when something so tragic had happened that people were like, how is life going to go on after this? People are thinking more of that, and then ease themselves into thinking, okay, well, how can we be funny? How can we find joy in our lives in order to go on? And that's where these come out of just necessity. And that's where we have to be eased in we have to acknowledge the big emotional elephant in the room, and then be gently eased into the idea of being funny and lifting our own spirits, so we can, distract ourselves, process these emotions, and move on.
Yeah, it is overall, no matter how you feel about it, it is absolutely one of the most fascinating moments in the history of Saturday Night Live to kick off this show. This will follow with Dave Chappelle's very short monologue, 11 minutes for him. So he's going to come out, talk about how America elected an internet troll as their president, how white people are furious, talks about some of the recent shootings and ISIS. Ultimately, we'll end this monologue by asking people to give Trump a chance, which is, of course, something that, we all didn't know exactly how this would end up materializing. But it is one that I think a lot of people were pretty high on Chappelle's monologue at the time, just the tone and the way that he was walking around. Like, it really felt like he was dominating the stage and still had it. Like, he had just come back, but still to get him here, the presence was felt. And I think that most people seem to enjoy that. That will be followed by an election night sketch that I think most people do remember, where we're going to go through the entire night from the perspective of this one party, where you're going to have several people at the party who are just disheveled as you go through the night, including Adie Bryant and Vanessa Bayer and Beck Bennett and Cecily Strong. And then Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock are there. And you get the perspective of the white people at the party versus the black people at the party, who just know that everything is going to go wrong and they're okay. They're equipped to deal with it, but the white people cannot. And I think that this is a really fun look at what was happening through many homes in America throughout the night, Bill.
Yeah, possibly the most relatable political sketch in the history of SNL, because, you were sitting on your couch watching this, making the same excuses that Cecily and Adie and Beck are making. Of course he won Kentucky. Yeah, that's where all the racists are. And having Dave, word? When Trump wins Florida, and I guess the Latinos didn't hear about your toast. Another great line. And then adding Chris Rock to it. And just the perspective of African Americans who are, this is the worst thing that's happened to our country, and or the most shameful thing that America's ever done. It puts it in a different light, especially in that week and in that time. Like, okay, well, let's maybe pump the brakes and look at this from a wider view. Yes, it is shocking, but is it the worst thing we've ever done? 9 years later, who knows? But at that moment, yeah, it made a lot of sense.
Steve, how do you feel about this election night sketch?
It's I think it's one of the better political sketches of the last decade on SNL, and really part of it at its best. I love the Chris Rock line at the end. We're talking about urban voters in Wisconsin. It's like, yeah, you better hope there's 100,000 black voters in Green Bay. Blood brothers do love the Packers, and yeah, so that bring just the kind of the perspective of, I would refer to them as sort of insufferable white liberals, and the two black guys who were almost not quite antagonistic, but sort of bringing on a little bit more of the way of perspective. And yeah, it does. Certain things have not aged well, like when Dave Chappelle goes, "You're all trying to act like they're going to go pick like they want to go pick their own strawberries." Well, that hasn't aged as well as it should, but as hasn't aged as well as we thought in the moment. But really a wonderful piece, and probably one of the better political sketches, certainly of that cycle, and maybe in the last decade.
Our friend Andrew in the chat said something that I have been saying since this episode aired, where I always felt like this should have been the cold open. I know that it wouldn't have ended up being nearly as iconic as the Hallelujah cold open, but I felt like there was like a take here that was interesting, and at least like going through the night in that way could have had a different perspective. But again, that's just a personal thing. Overall, though, this is a sketch that I think people do very fondly remember from this episode. It would then be followed by a pre-tape Walking Dead Chappelle show. And right away, that this episode definitely feels like that event that Steve was talking about, because we get Dave Chappelle standing on home base, introducing the pre-tape. And it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. It feels like original era vibes, of course. And then we're going to get a Walking Dead parody that introduces a lot of the Chappelle show characters. And that creates for an incredible pre-tape that went super viral after this one, Jeffrey. So what were your thoughts on it?
Maybe I'm in the minority here. Was never a fan of this sketch. I rewatching it, I chuckled a bit, but I stopped watching The Walking Dead, I think maybe like partway through season 4, sometime before Negan was introduced. So I didn't really have any connection to it there. Not that I have to watch something to appreciate a parody of it. And the Chappelle Show characters, I was familiar with, but not super familiar with. I only ever watched Chappelle's Show sporadically. So for me, this sketch, it felt like something designed. What's the word? I forget the exact way I want to phrase it, but it felt like it was specifically designed to go viral because it was making fun of a popular show at the same time as it was resurrecting the host's popular characters from another show. To me, there wasn't really any like comedic hook there. It was just a bunch of goofy things happening within the framework of a horror show. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it didn't work for me as well as other people, but I don't hate it.
Yeah, look, it feels like this is a super obvious thing to do, but I just thought it was so clever the way that they integrated these two things together. If you are a fan of the Chappelle Show and you go back and you're like, okay, I haven't seen these characters in so long, is it possible that Dave? I think that was a part of the discourse, by the way, was like, will Dave do any of these characters on the show? Like, can they translate to Saturday Night Live? Obviously, we're going to get the intro. Not only is it reminiscent of the old era of SNL, but it's also a Chappelle Show thing of him talking directly to camera to introduce something, and then to have that lead into this sketch where you're going to talk about one of the biggest shows at the time that, even if you weren't watching, you still knew was happening, and then it's going to, bring you these characters that you thought you would never see again. I think it really met the moment for me in a way that it was able to take us away from what was happening in the 2016 election and just celebrate Dave Chappelle and his career. Casey, your thoughts on the Walking Dead Chappelle Show sketch?
Yeah, it worked on that level where after they'd helped us process our emotion and have that catharsis and put it in the proper perspective over the election. We got through that, and then we get a nice bit of nostalgia from the Chappelle that people did like. And this really worked for me because I've said this before, and I'll say it again. By the time he hosted for his third time, it had cemented in my mind that I was always a bigger fan of Chappelle's show than of Chappelle's stand-up, because I felt like a lot of his style of humor translated better into sketch comedy, because with his stand-up he could get a little self-indulgent, obviously, and he could be pretty sermonizing when he tries to make when he goes to extreme lengths to make a really sincere sounding point. He does that to a point where it interferes with him being funny, but with sketches, whatever ideas he's trying to get across come through better, even if they're a little sillier and have less heft to them. But it was nice seeing these old characters like the Play a Hater's Ball and his pitiful white news anchor character and Little John and his Clayton Silky John. Yeah, and it was definitely time for his Clayton Bigsby character to come back for a reckoning. And even the ending with Tyrone the crackhead worked a bit better for me now than it did then.
Yeah, and getting Donnell Rawlings in there was also very fun. We get A Tribe Called Quest performing music here, which is also really, really iconic for this episode. Weekend Update, everyone also anticipating what Jost and Shay, who are really, in a way, coming into their own. Like, everyone, they had established themselves, but like they're reaching all-time status here throughout this 2016 election, and everyone's excited for what they're going to have to say about it. Because of the events of the night, we only have room for one correspondent, and that is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, played by Kate McKinnon here. So she gets a moment to play another political figure here, talking about the Supreme Court and Trump and all of that. Bill, anything you want to say about Weekend Update from this night?
I always enjoyed her impression of RPG, and I know when they released the documentary about Ruth Bader Ginsburg a couple years ago, they showed her clips of Kate playing her, and she seemed to get a kick out of it. This 85-year-old woman who probably had not seen a second of SNL in her life thought this was a really fun impression. They did it a little too much, but this is only the fourth time we've seen this. She gets a lot of good Pence jokes in here, talking about all his anti-gay stances, and sorry you watched Magnum PI when you were young and got quarter chub, but but yeah, this works for me. It's a little formulaic after this, but it's good here.
I remember watching this update, and I think that they do end it with Kate coming in at the end. And I was thinking to myself at the time watching this live, I wonder if we're going to get Dave at the update desk doing something, because it just felt like he was that like overwhelming personality that you would get up there. But we're going to save that for something really interesting that's going to happen next. One of the most meta sketches in the history of Saturday Night Live, where we're going to see, hair, the hair of the Jerry's Place employees. They become target of a health inspector, and the sketch is going to break down as Dave Chappelle and the cast members end up discussing Jerry's Place in a post-sketch press conference that is very reminiscent of everything we do here over at the Saturday Night Network, so much so that we've referenced this sketch a million times over. I absolutely love this one. You know why, but I'm a sucker for meta on Saturday Night Live. When I saw this, I was like, this is the right episode to do this on. Just have some fun, break format, have fun with the show. Steve, I love Jerry's Place.
Yeah, and admittedly, I'm a bit of a sucker for sort of the inside baseball going. Sort of the. I felt like some of the reactions were a little bit the same, or everything was like an exasperated "next question, please" sort of a thing. But I love the concept, and yeah, like I said, I agree. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, it's like I remember when that Manning cast cold open started to go in season 48 to kick off the premiere. We were all like, yes, this is the greatest cold open ever. And it was one of those things that's like, it's so funny how, again, on a night with Hallelujah, where it's like a little bit mixed feelings for a lot of people, you can also get something like this where the show can then look inside itself and make fun of themselves and how everyone is covering the show. And I just felt like it was the perfect time and place for them to go in this direction. And Dave obviously was a huge influence on this sketch. Jeffrey, what were your thoughts on Jerry's Place at the time?
So my hackles were raised when Leslie seemed to be missing her cues a few times early in the sketch, which brought back traumatic memories of one of her early sketches. I think from her first season when Chris Rock hosted. It was, I think that sketch is called The Couple, where she blew a line and then walked off stage and walked back on. But clearly they were referencing that. So when they, switched to the press conference breakdown bit, I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. I'm a sucker for meta stuff as well. And it's like that was such, I'm like, I hope that was a healing moment for Leslie. Like, I hope that exorcised any remaining demons she had from that previous sketch.
And I absolutely loved the moment where Dave was like, I really thought it was going to become the next David S. Pumpkins, which of course is a reference to the show we just talked about from 2 episodes earlier. There's just like a lot of great moments in this, Bill. I know you had to love this one.
Oh, definitely. Obviously you need the joke of Leslie covering it in the post-game presser, but it's almost a little bit cruel to put her in this situation, because we all had that feeling that Jeff had when she blew another line. Are you kidding me? Like she had such struggles in sketches. So to have that here, but it makes sense by the time you get to the end of it. The Iverson references, we're talking about cue cards right now, is a great part of it as well. Yeah, I mean, this is something I wish the show would do more of, being able to break into the fourth wall in the meta references. So love this one a lot.
This is followed by a pre-tape where we get some kids talking politics, and I believe Dave Chappelle's real daughter inside of this one as well, just dropping some truth bombs about Trump to the rest of the kids. Casey, what were your thoughts on the kids talk politics pre-tape we had here?
That was unlike anything we would have seen on SNL in years. This felt like something that could have come out of the Richard Pryor episode for season 1, mostly due to its blackout short length, which was season 1 was the last time they did something this length, got in, got its point, got its laugh, and got out. So it really worked and made just an unexpected statement when you needed it to, and it was a great thing for that mid to late point in the show, and they really performed it well all around.
Yeah, very good, cute. Vanessa, very good in this one. Then we get a last call sketch here. And, I was really happy that we got a last call sketch here with Dave Chappelle. This would be the 6th one out of 9 of them. I felt like this is something that Kate McKinnon needed to have on the show. This almost felt like a favor to Kate, where this was like the catharsis for her to be able to play this character in this episode, opposite of Dave Chappelle. I still felt like, they weren't completely burned out on it. Getting Dave to sort of let his guard down and have some fun, making out with Kate as Keenan pours bleach into his eyes. I think that this one really made me laugh on the rewatch. Bill, what were your thoughts on this last call sketch?
Yeah, how many of these have we talked about, John? Is this the 3rd?
Yeah, we did the Adam Sandler one previously, and
Larry David.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same as usual. Snack food, all the things. You get the references here of 66. You're facing away while I work on myself. Always a fun position. And Keenan laughing, which somehow he holds it together in most of these as he's doing this cartoonish bit with the drapes or the bleach or whatever it is. So them cutting to him and him actually breaking a little bit is kind of funny to me here. So yeah, I mean, never hate these, never love them. They're just kind of right down the middle.
Yeah, and it's a very memorable vision of Kate and Dave Chappelle making out as they're spraying the drink dispenser across to each other. So some really good stuff here. Steve, are you a fan of the last call sketches?
Oh. No, not really. But no, I kind of agree with Bill. It's kind of down the middle. You know what you're getting. It's Kate kind of in her bag. She's it's her playing as sort of the social outcast character. There's a part of me kind of watching it like from this vantage point. But I agree. I think Kate needed that after that week, and I think honestly I think it probably played well in that moment too. Just this ridiculous sketch that had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, it is. It is. I would agree with that. And then we do get another performance from Tribe Called Quest, the space program. This one has Busta Rhymes in it. That's a fun performance. And then we would get another pre-tape called Love and Leslie. And this is the beginning of the iconic story of Leslie Jones and Kyle Mooney's relationship backstage at the show, which is this very meta series of pre-tapes where they have their relationship and eventually a kid and them leaving the show and the whole thing. And it is very fun. This is the first one we see here where Leslie Jones talking about not being able to get a man and sort of has that, look back to her time and discussions on what we get to see from her on Weekend Update and talks about her photos of Leslie when she's younger. And then we see a reveal that it's Kyle Mooney, who is her mysterious new man that she's found. And this is, I think, shortly after the Kyle versus Kanye pre-tape that we got that a lot of people were talking about. They were very excited about from Kyle Mooney. But yeah, there's some really good lines in here, including the ending with Kyle Mooney and Colin Jost, where he calls him a little bitch. And just to me, I was like, oh, this show is extremely meta. And I love that they're doing this all in this episode. Casey, how do you feel about these series of pre-tapes, including the beginning one that we see here with Love and Leslie?
I think this is, another thing that, another reoccurring thing from this time period that got off on the right foot and, added increasing meta layers to it as it went on and, added some, emotional, real heart and emotional depth to it. And I mean, Leslie and Kyle would make their own separate backstage meta type pre-tapes. Putting them together really tapped into, something unique, something with heart that the show was missing, and something that's just a bit silly, that it's not too tonally jarring. It would get sillier and sillier over time. Just addresses real dynamics backstage at the show, and I really liked it.
Yeah, it is absolutely great. And the ending with Chappelle finding them having sex in his dressing room and the whole that reaction to that. It is a great moment. And then the final sketch of this episode is the football party sketch, a really silly and dumb sketch to end the night. And I think that is a great way to end this night, a night of a lot of emotions, where we're going to find out that there's a football party where people are hanging out and watching the game. And then Dave Chappelle is like a 40-year-old man. And Leslie Jones is going to come down the stairs, still lives with his mom, and continues to be breastfeeding at his age. And the friends' reactions to it, it's just so great and so stupid, Bill, to get this to end the night.
Yeah, this kind of thing doesn't usually work for me. It's very broad, but I think this was almost like the after dinner mint that we needed after so many different things, so many emotions going on throughout the night. I do love Dave's line, channeling Lovett's jealous. When he talks to his friends about being able to breastfeed. But yeah, I mean, this is just okay. Probably brings the episode just down a little notch for me here.
Okay, it does not bring the episode down for me. I love that they went for this. This is like sort of in the blueprint of what I look for from an SNL episode, is just to get like very stupid at the end of the night. Jeffrey, do you feel similar to me?
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, I do like them getting stupid at the end. I think there are better examples of getting stupid and or gross. Like what comes to mind is like the Bird Family sketch from when Juliana Margulies hosted in season 25. Although I think that might have been like a post monologue sketch as opposed to a 10-1. But this one was enjoyable enough. Kyle given two great performances in a row as the friend who's actually supportive of the adult breastfeeding. Yeah, it's I like, if I'm forgiving of I don't think this is a super hilarious sketch, but I'm forgiving of last sketches of the night that are willing to go this over the top, or this lowbrow, or this whatever sort of adjective fits for the moment.
So a very crazy night of Saturday Night Live, one of the most memorable episodes ever. Let's give our final opinions on this one landing here at 7. Is it too high? Is it too low? Or just right? Steve, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I still think it's a little too high, and I'm with you on it being an event, and it was certainly an event before when it was announced that he was the host. It was definitely an event afterwards. You had a monologue that was a classic. I think the election night sketch was probably one of the better political sketches they've had in a long time, and the monologue, or the cold open, was polarizing to say the least. But I feel like most of the rest of the show was kind of, good to kind of great, but nothing, no sketch was super memorable other than that. I mean, Jury's Place we like because it's kind of a meta sketch and it's a little inside baseball, but I think we maybe have a little two different definitions of maybe the greatest episode. I still want it to be at a certain level of funny, and I don't think it quite met the mark there. If it would still be top 15 for me, like it's not all the way off the list. That's ridiculous, but I don't know if I love it at 7.
That is fair. Jeffrey, how are you feeling about this one now that we've gone through it?
I feel similarly as Steve, but I mean, when you major distinction between like greatest and best, that kind of added a new wrinkle to what I was thinking. If by greatest you mean like important or noteworthy or such a landmark part in the history of the show, then by that definition it moves up a few notches, but I still don't think it's funny enough to be top 10, maybe top 20. I might say maybe even somewhere in between 20 and 30 by my final estimation, especially compared to the Tom Hanks episode. just being in such close proximity, both on this countdown and when they originally aired. There's nothing in this episode on the same level as David Pumpkins or Black Jeopardy. And, so I think like the Hanks episode, I think is the best episode of the past 10 seasons, at least off the top of my head. So I think that should be higher than this episode at least. So yeah, it deserves its spot on this countdown, but yeah, I'd move it down a bit.
Okay, very interesting. Casey, would love to know your perspective on this.
Well, I think putting this anywhere in the top 10 is quite a bit high. But if there had to be a Dave Chappelle episode in any top 25, 51, or whatever number of episodes of SNL of all time, if you had to have a Dave Chappelle episode and you can only pick one, this would be the only one that you could pick, because you do have to remove it from its time to see some of the flaws, and you have to put it back in its time to see how people reacted to it the way they did at that time. But this is like the one and only time when people were willing to accept the idea that Dave Chappelle, of all people, is going to come on SNL and heal this nation after the election, rather than just, people rolling their eyes and going, ugh, him again. So that's my take. It is a little high, but only this one could be on this list.
All right, Bill Kenny, let's get your final thoughts on Dave Chappelle and A Tribe Called Quest at number 7.
Yeah, keeping in its historical perspective, this is back-to-back episodes where I'm saying this, but this is more memorable than great. But I would still probably keep it in the top 20, top 25, but this is definitely too high for me. There's some iconic moments, I think, with the election night. Hallelujah, wherever you come down on that, and Dave bringing back all his old characters. But there is a couple of questionable moments here as we go through, or just kind of, middle of the road with the last call, kids talk politics, things like that. So love seeing him on the show after all this time. And but yeah, this is a bit too high.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really feel like this is probably, if not close to the right spot, maybe just an inch high. Like, I really think that this is one of those that should be in the pantheon of important episodes in the history of the show. And it has some really great sketches in it as well. Like, I think the Walking Dead Chappelle show is so great. I think Election Night is so great. Jerry's Place is so great. It doesn't have necessarily like the all-time great status sketch that you would get with David Pumpkins or with a more Cowbell. But in terms of like what this episode brought to the series, I think you have to factor that in. I do put this in the same box as like a George Wendt and Francis Ford Coppola episode, where that one was very different in terms of experimental nature to it, but that one was so important to the show. This one has that same thing to it as well. So as far as like parsing through where it compares, I'll go through my rankings in just a moment. I think that, it doesn't have the perfect iconic status that a few of the episodes in the countdown have, but it's just in like that right next category of episodes that I think should be right close to them. So that is where this one will land for me. So, Bill, I'm going to bring mine and your rankings on stage now, and we will go through them and ask our panel how they're feeling of what we put down. So let me put them up here. And, Bill, you'll go first this time, and I'll ask you how you feel. Let me get there you go. This is how we'll do this. How you feel about these 3 episodes. So, Bill, tell our guys over here where you place these 3.
Well, I'll start right with the top 20, and I put the Tom Hanks episode here. I kept moving it down as I was looking at this list because of the other Hanks episodes that are so much better overall, top to bottom. So I slid that in at number 20. At number 20, I have Sigourney at number 19, Hanks season 15 at 18, Kristen at 17, Peyton at 16, JT season 32 at 15. And then here's where I put Chappelle at 14. Again, like there's just so many. When we're talking about top 10, it has to be, to me, banger after banger after banger. And I don't think we get that necessarily here. Right ahead of that is Rickles at 13, Candy at 12. Can't read it. Sorry.
No worries. You got Coppola
and Went at 11. Tom Hanks season 16 at 10. Marty at 9. Larry David at 8. Bergazzi at 7. Moved Sandler down to 6. Ham at number 5. And here's where I put Walken. So this is what we're talking about, where it's everything hits in this episode of season 25 with Christopher. My top 3 remains unchanged, with Farrell at 3, Baldwin season 15, and then Hanks season 14 at number 1 at this moment.
Okay, I put Tom Hanks at number 18. I have it slightly higher than you. I do think the episode has obviously 2 very iconic sketches. I think and a lot of very good ones. I would say the episode was great. I don't think it's like perfect, but it's great, and it's among some of the better ones that we talked about on this list, but it's still lacking something about it that sort of, like I said, tells the story of the series that I think adds to its iconic nature. It's then followed at 17 by Sigourney Weaver, then Tom Hanks' season 16 episode, slightly under that one. Kristen Wiig, I have at 49. That one, I think, just so, like, again, a lot of moments with, returning cast members, like those are the types of things like that sort of like add to the meta nature of the episode that I think are really great. Kristen Wiig at 49, Sandler's at 44, Larry David 41, Will Ferrell's 34 is at 12, JT's 32 episodes at 11. Then my top 10 right now, I got Candice Bergen season 2, Don Rickles season 9, Peyton Manning episode season 32 at number 8. Then I got Walken. I got Walken at number 7, so slightly lower than you, Bill. I have it right now there. I think this is the right place for it. Around 2 of my favorite episodes ever with Peyton Manning's and Marty Short's from season 38 at number 6. Just again, such a great episode, so much fun. Probably my favorite Walken episode. And then I put Dave Chappelle's episode at number 5. I have it significantly higher than you on this list. Like I said, I've said it so many times. I think that this one is super important and has to be there. It's right behind the George Wendt and Francis Ford Coppola at number 4, which I know I have higher than you. I think that also is super important and iconic to the series. And then my top 3 are like basically my 3 perfect episodes that I have on the countdown right now. I got Baldwin and the B-52s, followed by John Hamm and Coldplay, and then we both have Tom Hanks and Keith Richards at the top of the list. Casey, do you have a preference between either mine list or Bill's list? Casey, just unmute yourself just so I can hear you.
I mean, scanning both your lists, I am leaning toward John's list. I like a lot of the placements that he has there, but I do agree more with where Bill placed the Dave Chappelle episode we just talked about. I'd say right now I'd go with John's list, but I agree with some of Bill's list too.
Steve, let's get your perspective on this. Which list are you feeling better about?
I'm having a squint to see the whole list, I'd be honest with you. But I would say probably that's okay. I mean, obviously it's a lot of shows. We're getting deep into the list at this point. I would say probably it's really minute. But I just based on tonight's episode, or based on tonight, I give the slight edge to Bill's list. I think I rate the Walken episode a little bit higher than you do, and then I agreed with your placement on the Hanks and where Hanks was on the list, but I agreed with Bill on Chappelle and where that placed on the list. I think there just needed to be more sketches in that episode that hit. I agree with you that it was an event and that's why it was worthy of being on the list, but I think I give Bill the edge. And maybe it's just my own sentimentality towards the Walken episode because I loved it so much.
Jeffrey, let's get your perspective on which list you like better.
So I'm seeing, like, I'm looking at Bill's list and I'm like, oh, I like that more than John's list. But then I see something I disagree with. And I'm like, oh, maybe I like John's list more. I don't know. So I think it evens out in the end. Like today, like, I'm like, yeah, I like Bill's Chappelle place just based on just looking at today's episodes. I'm like, I like Bill's Chappelle episode placement more, but I like John's Hanks episode placement more. So, and then I'm looking at previous episodes that were discussed, and my biggest disagreement is probably with both of you, because I would put the Lindsay Lohan episode higher, and I'd put the Michael Jordan episode a lot higher. So
Hot takes.
I guess so, apparently. And then I remember, John, you loving the Will Ferrell episode from season 34, but Bill has that much higher than you. So I'm like, John, listen to your heart, put that higher. So I don't know. Maybe that's the tiebreaker, that I like Bill's ranking for more for now.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to reconsider that. These lists are, like I always say, are fluid, and we will lock them in at the end of this countdown. So in just a couple of weeks. All right, Bill, as far as your predictions are concerned, you locked up a prediction this week by adding 2 more seasons to the list that we didn't get to cover yet. So we have now talked about seasons 25 and seasons 42, which both did not come up before. So congratulations to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, John. And I got there from last week and this week with seasons that I didn't really have on my radar. I mean, maybe 42. I would have thought that we would be talking at least one of the 2 that we talked about tonight. But yeah, some major seasons that we have not talked about, and I've lost hope that we will. But I'm very happy that I made it to that, and that cast number still needs to change. But
we will debate it at the end, but only 9 out of 13 cast members and 2 out of 6 finales. So only 6 more episodes to come up here on the countdown. But guys, this was wonderful to get to talk to you for almost 3 hours about 3 iconic episodes of Saturday Night Live. So I appreciate you all supporting the show and joining us here for this countdown episode. If you enjoyed what you heard here tonight, please subscribe to the podcast to never miss any of the countdown episodes or coverage of season 51 that we have going on here. And you can follow us on social media at the SNL Network to see all of our amazing content we are posting about Saturday Night Live. Casey, thank you so much, man, for joining us. Always great to get to speak to you. Tell the listeners where they could find everything you got going on.
Well, I'm still doing my blog where about this week, this time next week, you'll probably be seeing new reviews of all 3 episodes we discussed here. Also, I've been reviewing some of season 31 and 32 for the We Heart Hater podcast, which me and our friend of the show, Deej Behrens, have been producing. Most recently, we did our own review of the Justin Timberlake episode that was discussed in last week's countdown. So if you watched that one, thought, well, what more is there to say on this episode that hadn't been said, you can tune into We Heart Hater. And the next We Heart Hater episode that we're working on, work in progress, will be the episode focused on all of Bill's contributions to South Park, voice acting and writing. And we should be recording that tomorrow, and that'll be out a week from Thursday. Deej pitched me this idea a while ago, and we thought, well, with the show South Park currently airing its hottest, most buzzed about season ever, we better strike while the iron is hot. So we'll probably be recording tomorrow as whatever new South Park episode Comedy Central airs. So that's
Very cool.
what we got coming up.
Thank you so much, Casey. And speaking of season 31, I got something very special for the patrons coming up in just a few weeks that will be premiering as a special perk for you, patreon.com/the SNL Network. So I look forward to talking about that as soon as we got that ready to go. Jeffrey Malone, so great to get to meet you and have your perspective here on the podcast. Anything you would like to say to the listeners?
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a great experience to join some fellow SNL nerds. If you enjoy my views on SNL and think you might enjoy what I have to say about other TV shows and movies and pop culture in general, best places to find me on the internet are my blog, jmoney.com. That's JMUNNEY.com. So it's my first initial, then the word money purposely misspelled. And I also co-host a podcast with my aunt called That's Entertainment. So like entertainment, but aunt, to make it a little punny. So we talk about various pop culture topics on each episode. We did do an episode about SNL several years ago. And I also do SNL episode reviews on jmoney.com. So yeah, you can find me there.
Day Night Live, I think, was probably the name of that episode, right?
It is now, if it wasn't before.
Sounds
Yes.
good, Jeffrey. I'll make sure to check that one out. Steve, thank you so much for joining us as well. We got Steve Bishop here with the incredible background and a great, honestly, amazing podcast voice as well, Steve, from you. So thank you for joining us here.
And yet I don't have a podcast to promote. I do some occasional PA work for the Hartford Yard Goats, which is a AA minor league team in Connecticut. I guess I'll promote the improv theater that I work with and occasionally perform with, and that's CT Comedy Theater in Hartford, Connecticut. So if you're ever in the Hartford, Connecticut area or in Central Connecticut, come on down, SCAT improv.com if you want to find out more.
Very cool, Steve. And seriously, thank you all for your support of the show and joining us here on the podcast for 3 hours. Bill Kenny, always appreciate you. We did a double header today. How are you feeling at the end of 18 innings?
I feel like we should have a post gamer just like Jerry's Place here, John. Yeah, 4 hours and 2 podcasts with you today. It's been a pleasure as always. Any more breaking news, John? I'll be happy to jump on this week. Hopefully that's it.
Yes, I do appreciate you. I'm not sure what to expect for the rest of the week with some breaking news. If we're going to get any other information about season 51, if there is, we will come back for that. And if not, we will be back next Monday night to reveal 6, 5, and 4 on the countdown as we head to the penultimate week of our reveals of this countdown. We also have everything you need to know about SNL season 24 coming out on Thursday night on the YouTube channel. So if you are a fan of that series and you want to go see everything that happened in 1998 and 1999, we have that available for you on Thursday evening. So very excited to premiere that. So much happening here over at the SNN. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe and follow us wherever you can. I want to thank Late Nighter for being our presenting partner for the show here tonight. Bill, Casey, Jeffrey, and Steve for joining us, and everyone in the chat for hanging out with us on this Tuesday night. On behalf of everyone here at the Saturday Night Network, my name is John Schneider, and we will see you next time, everybody.